Chapter 507. They could drain the water when dealing with Ao Run, but this was the border between the Great Zhou and the Shen Kingdom. Draining the lake would cause a territorial dispute between the Great Zhou and the Shen Kingdom. At that time, the Shen Kingdom would bite back, and the Great Zhou would be the one who took the initiative to provoke them. At that time, the grievances of the people and soldiers in the South County would be in vain. Li Mu glanced at Ao Run and said, "Find a way to force her out." Ao Run's face turned bitter and said, "Master, that's a real dragon. I'm no match for her." Li Mu said lightly, "If you can force her out, I'll give you a month's leave when we go back this time. You can go back to the East County." "Oh, Ying, Ping Ping, Hong Hong, Tsuehua, wait for me at home." A deafening roar came from the north shore of the South Lake. Ao Run turned into a flood dragon and rushed into the lake. Huge waves began to surge in the lake again, and from time to time, there were bursts of dragon roars. Li Mu stood on the shore and asked the middle-aged man, "What's going on with this dragon?" The middle-aged man cupped his fists and said, "My lord, the South Lake was originally a separate island between the Great Zhou and the Shen Kingdom. However, a few months ago, a giant dragon suddenly came here. When our soldiers approached the shore of the lake, they would be attacked by it. The people of the Shen Kingdom took the opportunity to occupy the island in the middle of the lake and control the entire South Lake. They repeatedly went ashore to provoke us and injured many of our sentries." As soon as Li Mu learned the situation from the sentinel, there was a cry from the lake. Ao Run flew out of the lake again, holding his stomach. A wound on his lower abdomen was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and said with fear, "That was close. Damn, you were so ruthless. My baby was almost gone." He was worried that Li Mu would blame him for failing to complete the task, so he immediately said, "Master, don't be angry. I still have a way to force her out." Li Mu glanced at him and said, "Speak." Ao Run said, "We can pee in this lake. If one person can't do it, we can call 100 people, 1,000 people. I don't believe she can still stay in the water." Before he could finish his words, a thick water column shot out from the lake and hit Ao Run, sending him flying 1,000 feet away. Ao Run flew back quickly. He pointed at the lake and said angrily, "Come up here if you have the ability." What answered him was another water column. State affairs were no small matter. This dragon had disgraced the dignity of the Great Zhou. Li Mu said to Ao Run in a deep voice, "Give me your Flood Dragon Core." The Flood Dragon Core was very important to him. Without it, his strength would be reduced by at least half. But since his master had spoken, Ao Run didn't dare to refuse. He carefully spat out a pigeon egg-sized ball and worriedly said to Li Mu, "Master, it's very important to me. You have to take care of it." Li Mu grabbed the pill. Looking at his rough appearance, Ao Run's heart was bleeding. Li Mu put the pill into his sleeve and jumped into the southern lake. This time, he didn't feel any rejection from the lake. Instead, he felt a sense of affinity. Although Ao Run's monster core couldn't increase his strength in the water, it wouldn't suppress him either. As soon as Li Mu entered the water, he saw a dragon tail sweeping towards him. It was too late to dodge. He stretched out his arms, but he was still pushed back dozens of feet. His arms were numb. A white dragon was dozens of feet away, staring at Li Mu with lantern-sized eyes. Li Mu wasn't stupid enough to compete with a dragon in terms of physical strength. With a thought, a golden beam of light flew out from his body. The Dao Bell rapidly expanded in the water and enveloped Li Mu. However, it didn't protect him like before. The bell flowed like water and attached itself to Li Mu's body. Moments later, the Dao Bell disappeared. Li Mu's body didn't seem to have changed, but his skin had darkened slightly. After the bell's spirit absorbed the heaven and earth origin energy and transformed into a human, it could separate itself from the bell. The Dao Bell also had some uses that Li Mu hadn't expected. The dragon tail attacked again. Li Mu stood in place and allowed the dragon tail to land on his body. Kacha! Li Mu's body didn't move at all, but a sound came from the dragon tail. Li Mu heard a cry of pain in the water. He didn't give the dragon a chance. He stretched out his arms and hugged the dragon tail. He used his Herculean art and rapidly rose up. Above the southern lake, there was a huge splash. A white dragon that was more than 100 feet long flew out of the water. Li Mu hugged its tail. After it flew out of the water, It turned its body and slammed its huge dragon head into Li Mu. Facing the dragon head that was as large as his body, Li Mu also slammed his head into it. Bang! There was a loud crash in the void, and the figures of the man and the dragon were both sent flying. However, the white dragon was suspended in the air, motionless, as if it was stunned by the crash, while the figure of the man continued to fly towards it. By the lakeside, Ao Run's body trembled. This collision hurt even him. To be able to gain the upper hand against a dragon with his body, he realized that his master had held back. Then he became happy. He hugged his arms and shouted, "Beat him up! Beat him up!" He would be happy to see either the female dragon or the man get beaten up. He even hoped that the female dragon would be more ruthless and help him vent his anger. Beside Ao Run, the 10 southern soldiers on the lakeside were also dumbfounded. This was an adult dragon. Although its cultivation was at the 5th realm, it could not be tamed unless one was at the 6th realm. Wasn't this lord from the worship department a little too powerful to be able to contend against a dragon with just his body of flesh and blood? In the sky, Li Mu's fist had arrived. The dragon suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a ball of flame. This was dragon breath, one of the most powerful flames in the world. Its power was even greater than the true Samadhi fire. It was one of the dragon's racial talents. In the face of this dragon breath, Li Mu raised his hand. A transparent barrier formed in front of him and blocked the dragon breath completely. The dragon roared at the sky again. Dark clouds quickly gathered above Li Mu's head, and a strong wind blew. The rain borrowed the wind's momentum and swept towards him. Li Mu stood in the rain and looked at the dragon indifferently. In the next moment, dark clouds also gathered above the dragon's head. The sky full of water hit its body. The dragon roared in pain and swayed its body, continuing to charge towards Li Mu. "Freeze!" Li Mu pointed with his finger. The huge dragon's body stopped in the air for a moment and quickly broke free. At this moment, Li Mu spoke again. "Formation!" This time, the dragon's body completely stopped in the air. Li Mu's figure flashed, and he was already riding on the dragon's body. Green light appeared on his fist, and he fiercely smashed the dragon's body. The dragon let out a dragon's roar, and its body twisted non-stop. Li Mu tightly grabbed the mane on its back, and his punches landed on the dragon's body, causing the dragon to roar continuously. Ao Run looked up at this scene, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He muttered. He even hit a woman. Too ruthless. This was the first time the soldiers of South County had seen someone beat up a true dragon like this. One of them muttered, "Are the consecrated masters of the worship department already so powerful? Even a true dragon is being chased and beaten by him. He's still so young." The middle-aged man looked at the figure beating up the dragon in the air, and a light suddenly appeared in his mind. He said excitedly, I know who he is." Bang! Li Mu's full-strength punch smashed the dragon from the sky to the ground, causing a cloud of dust to splash up. He rushed down and rode on the dragon again. He grabbed its mane and punched the dragon's body. Suddenly, the dragon's body under him changed. In the next moment, Li Mu found that he was riding on top of a white-clothed girl. One of his hands was grabbing her hair, while the other hand was clenched into a fist and punched her chest. Puff! The girl grunted. Even though Li Mu had restrained most of his strength, she still grunted, and blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Li Mu let go of her hair and got down from her body. He asked in a deep voice, "Evil creature, do you know what the punishment is for colluding with the Shen Kingdom to invade Great Zhou?" The girl closed her eyes and turned her head away. She gritted her teeth and said, "If you want to kill me, do as you please." Ao Run was worried that Li Mu would really kill the dragon. He quickly ran over and said, "Master, you can't kill her. You mustn't kill her. The dragon race can't give birth to a child for 100 years. If you kill a dragon, the dragon race will fight us to the death." The heavens were fair. The dragon race was born with great strength, but it was extremely difficult to reproduce. Almost every dragon couple was infertile, which caused the dragon race's population to be very small. Otherwise, with their strength, they would have unified the ancestral province long ago. Li Mu looked down at the dragon girl and asked, "What's your name? Why are you opposing the Great Zhou?" The girl still didn't speak. Li Mu didn't immediately force her. He first tied her up with the immortal binding chains. At this time, the Southern Army soldiers had already approached. The middle-aged man looked at Li Mu and suddenly asked, "If I may be so bold, may I know your name?" Li Mu looked at the crowd and smiled. He said, "Great Zhou's consecration department, Li Mu." As soon as he said this, the 10 people knelt on one knee and cupped their fists. The middle-aged man said excitedly, "Song Xian of the Southern Army's 7th Army 2nd Century Squad, greets Lord Li." Li Mu personally helped him up. He looked at the crowd and said, "You've all worked hard." The middle-aged man took a deep breath and stood up straight. He said solemnly, "It's my duty." Li Mu patted him on the shoulder and took out a few bottles of healing pills. He distributed them to everyone and returned the Jiao Dan to Ao Run. He said, "Catch those guys at the bottom of the lake." The cultivation of the 20 or so people from the Shen Kingdom was only at the 4th realm. They were quickly captured by Ao Run. Their cultivation was sealed and they were tied up on the shore. At first, these people were very stubborn. However, after Ao Run's torture and interrogation, they immediately confessed. They were the border guards of the Shen Kingdom. They were ordered by the Shen Kingdom's imperial court to deliberately cross the border and provoke a conflict between the two countries. A few months ago, there was a huge change in the Yao Kingdom. The northern part of the Great Zhou was in danger. The Shen Kingdom wanted to take advantage of the situation and occupy the Great Zhou's southern county while the Yao Kingdom invaded the Great Zhou. At that time, the Great Zhou would have to deal with the powerful enemy, the Yao Kingdom, and would be unable to mobilize troops. Unexpectedly, the chaos of the Yao Kingdom was quelled so quickly, and their plan fell through. Li Mu asked them to temporarily detain these people from the Shen Kingdom. He learned about the current situation of the southern county from Song Xian. Great Zhou did not have many troops in the southern county. The entire southern army only had about 10,000 people. It was different from the northern army, which had a large number of troops. The border between the Great Zhou and the Shen Kingdom stretched for thousands of miles. The southern army had built countless outposts on the border defense line. Each outpost was guarded by a small team of 10 people. Even so, the outposts on the southern border were sparse. There were often people from the Shen Kingdom who secretly crossed the border and caused trouble in the Great Zhou. In recent months, the Great Zhou had no time to care about the Shen Kingdom. The Shen Kingdom was even more unscrupulous. The people of the southern county were deeply disturbed. Naturally, the faith of the people was extremely low. It was impossible to completely change this situation. The border between the two countries was too long. No matter how many troops Great Zhou had stationed on the southern border, it could not completely eliminate this phenomenon. The imperial court could not waste too many troops here. The simplest way was, of course, to completely scare the Shen Kingdom, just like 100 years ago. However, the Great Zhou could not take the initiative to start a war. Li Mu rubbed the space between his eyebrows. Suddenly, a bell rang from Song Xian's waist. Song Xian heard the bell and took out a string of bells from his waist. One of them vibrated and made a crisp sound. His expression changed and he said, "It's the 5th team asking for help. They're in danger." Li Mu asked, "Where is the 5th team?" Song Xian pointed in a certain direction and said, "To the east, 25 miles away." "I'll go take a look first. Follow me," Li Mu said. Then, he turned into a stream of light and sped toward the east. 25 miles away, 10 sentries of the southern army were surrounding a bald man. The man was dressed differently from the people of the Great Zhou. Although it was said to be a siege, the man was actually fighting against 10 people with ease. With his Realm 5 cultivation, he could completely trample on these small cultivators who were only at the 2nd and 3rd realms. And what he enjoyed was the process of trampling on them. Ever since the Shen Kingdom and the Great Zhou fell out, the people of the country wanted to go to war with the Great Zhou. Even if there was a conflict with the Great Zhou border army, the imperial court would not blame them. The weapons of the southern army sentries slashed the bald man's body, creating a series of sparks. The bald man casually hit the dantian of a young sentinel with his palm. His cultivation was completely destroyed, and his aura immediately withered. In a few breaths, this person had destroyed the cultivation of 6 sentinels. Just as he raised his hand again, he suddenly raised his head and looked to the west. There was a powerful aura coming over at a high speed. He casually destroyed the sentinel in front of him and said indifferently, "The experts of the southern army are here. I won't play with you anymore." As soon as he finished speaking, He quickly retreated in the direction of the border. As long as he crossed that boundary marker, he would be in the territory of the Shen kingdom. That stone marker was a place that the Great Zhou border army could not cross. Thinking of this, he sped up again. But in the next moment, he suddenly felt his hair stand on end. A flying sword chased after him at an unbelievable speed. It pierced through his back and nailed his body to the boundary marker. His primordial spirit left his body and fled to the other side with a terrified expression. However, even though he had already stepped into the territory of the Shen kingdom, a small illusory sword chased after him and pierced through his primordial spirit. His terrified primordial spirit was still in the air when it started to slowly dissipate. All of this happened very quickly. Several southern army sentinels looked at this scene in shock. After a long time, their expressions changed from shock to joy. Behind them, Ao Run rushed over with his group. He looked at the bald man who was nailed to the ground and his nascent soul that had yet to dissipate. He gulped with difficulty. At this moment, he deeply understood that the reason he was still standing here in one piece was all because he had a loose tongue back then. Li Mu's gaze swept over everyone. When it swept over the dragon girl, she trembled and immediately said, "My name is Ao Qingxin. My home is in the southern sea. I sneaked out. I didn't want to go against you, but someone stole my inner core and forced me to work for them." Chapter 508. Li Mu did not have time to pay attention to the dragon. He quickly walked to the sentries and used his magic power to check their bodies. When he withdrew his hand, Li Mu's face was gloomy. Out of the 10 sentries, 7 of them had their cultivation crippled, and 3 of them were seriously injured. Li Mu first used the Buddhist light to stabilize the injuries of the 3 seriously injured, and then gave them a few bottles of healing pills. The 7 sentries whose dantians were destroyed were even more troublesome to treat. Li Mu needed to refine a cauldron of heaven-level pills to rebuild their dantians. Fortunately, his storage space was very rich. Most of them were given to him by Huan Ji. It was only a matter of time before they recovered their cultivation. He had just arrived in the South County and had witnessed 2 border conflicts with his own eyes. It was enough to see how arrogant the border guards of the Shen Kingdom were. An hour later, Li Mu arrived at the main camp of the South Army under the lead of Song Xian and the others. The South Army had a total of 10 armies. The other 9 armies were led by the First Army. Here, Li Mu met the commander of the First Army of the South Army. This was a burly man. His cultivation was only at the 5th realm. When he saw Li Mu, he bowed to him and said, "Lord Li, I've heard a lot about you." Li Mu went straight to the point and said, "I'll skip the pleasantries. In the past few months, the people of the South County have been too weak. I'm here for this matter." Speaking of this, the commander of the South Army slammed his fist on the table and said, "These animals don't dare to fight us head-on, so they go around disturbing the people. Every time we arrive, it's already too late. The people are suffering because of them. Their whereabouts are unknown. In the past few months, the South Army has only caught a dozen of them. For this, several of our soldiers have also died." Li Mu asked, "Where are they?" Commander Zhang said, "In the prison." At this moment, a deputy general hurried into the tent and said, "General, people from the Shen Kingdom have come again. They're causing trouble outside and asking us to release their people." Commander Zhang said angrily, "King bullshit. If we let them go, would our soldiers have died for nothing?" There was a commotion outside the tent, and a dark-skinned man in strange clothes barged in. He spoke in a non-standard Great Zhou dialect and said loudly, "You have no right to punish the people of Great Zhou. Even if they committed crimes in your country, they must be handed over to Great Zhou for punishment. This is the law set by your late emperor." Commander Zhang whispered into Li Mu's ear, "Although this is the rule set by the previous emperor, we can't let this person go. Our soldiers can't die in vain. The Shin nation must pay the price." Li Mu walked in front of the Shin person, looked at him, and lightly said, "The late emperor has been dead for 5 years. Now, this rule has been changed. The Great Zhou is the Celestial Empire. If a foreigner commits a crime in the Great Zhou, his crime will be increased by 1 level." That Shangua man frowned and said, "Who are you? Do you think you can change a country's laws just because you say so?" Li Mu smiled and said, "I'm sorry, but it's true." He looked at Commander Zhang and said, "Bring the Shin nation prisoners here." Commander Zhang clasped his fist and ordered his men, "Bring them here." They walked out. Outside the Southern Army camp, there was a row of tombstones. Commander Zhang explained to Li Mu, "These are the soldiers of the Southern Army who sacrificed themselves over the years. I could only bury their bodies here." These tombstones were engraved with names and dates of birth. Li Mu looked at them. Judging from the dates of birth and death, some of the soldiers were only 18 or 19 years old when they sacrificed themselves. 13 Xin Nation prisoners were brought out. Seeing dozens of their people standing outside, they thought they could go back. They smiled and were about to walk over, but they were held back by the Southern Army soldiers behind them. Li Mu looked back and said, "Bring them here." The 13 people kept resisting and struggling, but in the end, they were brought over and stood in front of these tombstones. Li Mu said indifferently, "Make them kneel." The 13 people stood straight, and none of them knelt. Li Mu looked at them, and an invisible aura came out of his body. The 13 people suddenly felt the pressure on their bodies double, as if a mountain was pressing down on them. They gritted their teeth and wanted to continue standing, but their backs bent. As the pressure on their heads increased, their knees also bent. In the end, there were only a dozen bang sounds, and all of them knelt on the ground. If they didn't kneel, that force would crush their bones. Seeing this, the Xin Nation emissary led more than 10 attendants forward. Li Mu turned to look at them, and his aura swept out. The emissary and the others couldn't help but take a few steps back. They were locked in place by a terrifying aura. They stood in place, not daring to move, and sweat poured down their foreheads like rain. Commander Zhang, who was standing beside Li Mu, also felt this aura. He was extremely shocked. The legendary Lord Li was even more powerful than he had imagined. There was silence in front of the tent. Li Mu looked down at the first person kneeling and asked, "What crime did he commit?" A deputy general walked forward and said, "This person raped several women in the South Commandery." Li Mu took out the saber at the deputy general's waist. Using his finger as a pen, he drew a rune on the saber. Then he said, "In the Great Zhou, raping a woman is punished with 3 to 10 years in prison. If the circumstances are serious, you can be sentenced to death. You raped several women, so it's not too much to sentence you to death, right?" Under the pressure of that powerful aura, the Xin Nation cultivator couldn't speak at all. If he opened his mouth, he would be crushed by this aura. He couldn't speak, and he didn't have the chance to speak. Li Mu raised his saber, and a head rolled down. Hot blood rolled down from the headless body, dyeing the ground in front of him red. There were runes engraved on the saber. With one slash, the soul would scatter and the body would die. Even the primordial spirit and soul would not be left behind. Commander Zhang's eyelids twitched. Soon, there was only joy left in his eyes. He also wanted to do the same, but he didn't have Lord Li's courage. The Xin Nation envoy's face was ashen. However, under the pressure of that aura, he couldn't take a step forward. It was even difficult for him to open his mouth. Ao Run's face was pale. He secretly hid behind Ao Qingxin. Ao Qingxin dared to show her toughness at the beginning because she thought that no human would dare to kill a dragon. However, she didn't dare to take the risk now. Since just now, this seemingly gentle man had already killed 2 people in a row. He was so straightforward. He was simply an executioner who killed without batting an eye. Perhaps he really dared to kill a dragon. Ao Qingxin couldn't gamble with her life. She didn't dare to gamble with her life. At this moment, she only regretted. If she had known that the outside world was so terrifying, she would have agreed to her father's proposal. So what if she married that guy in the East Sea that she didn't like? It was better than running away from the marriage. After running away for half a year, her inner core was gone. Now she couldn't even keep her life. Tears flashed in her eyes. She said regretfully, "Father, I was wrong. Please come and save me." Li Mu cut down the first person, then looked at the second person kneeling and asked, "What crime did he commit?" The deputy general took a deep breath, gritted his teeth and said, "He maliciously attacked our sentry. One of our sentry was sacrificed because of this person." Death penalty. Li Mu waved his saber again. Another headless body fell down. This person slaughtered several people in the border county and collected their souls for cultivation. Death penalty. This person. Death penalty. As the 13 headless bodies fell to the ground, the surroundings of the military tent were silent. Whether it was the soldiers of the southern army or the emissary of the Shen country, they all held their breaths. It was so quiet that they could hear their own breathing and heartbeat. Soon, the young man from the Great Zhou spoke again. His voice wasn't loud, but it sent chills down the spines of the dozen or so people from the Shen country. From today onwards, if the guards of the Shen country cross the border without permission, their cultivation will be destroyed and they will be sent back. If they attack the outposts of the Great Zhou, if they provoke the soldiers of the Great Zhou, they will be killed without mercy. If they cause chaos in the Great Zhou, they will be killed without mercy. If they are found by the lake, they will be drowned in the lake. If they are found in the mountains, they will be hanged on a tree. No one will be spared. He withdrew his aura. The emissary of the Shen country and his entourage fell to the ground, their legs weak. Li Mu glanced at them and said to Commander Zhang, "Deport them out of the country and place the corpses of these 13 people on the border." The border between the Great Zhou and the Shen country was long. The sparse outposts couldn't stop the people of the Shen country. Only by using iron-blooded methods and killing them until they were scared could they put an end to the chaos in the South County. Since he started cultivating, Li Mu rarely had the desire to kill. However, when he looked at the tombstones in front of the big tent of the Southern Army and the soldiers of the Great Zhou who had sacrificed themselves, his killing intent rose like never before. He didn't know when it started, but he had already regarded himself as a part of the Great Zhou. He stood in front of the 13 headless corpses and turned around. His gaze happened to look at the pale Ao Run and Ao Qingxin. Under Li Mu's emotionless gaze, the flood dragon and the dragon trembled at the same time. Ao Qingxin trembled and hurriedly said, "No, don't kill me. I can guard the lake for you, and I can also be your mount. Don't you want to have a dragon as your mount?" These words didn't move Li Mu, but Ao Run shivered. All the hair on his body stood on end, and his soul was almost scared out of his body. If his master took this dragon as his mount, he would have nothing to do with it. In terms of strength, he was not as strong as this female dragon. In terms of status, he was a flood dragon, and the other party was a dragon. He was also inferior to a dragon. In terms of gender, his master was so lecherous. Whether it was day or night, he would definitely prefer to ride a female dragon instead of a male flood dragon. In this way, he would have no value at all. He knelt on the ground with a plop, hugging Li Mu's leg. With snot and tears he cried, "Master, don't do this. I've worked hard even if I didn't make any contributions. You can't forget the old flood dragon when you have a new one. You can ride this female dragon. I'll guard the lake. Don't kill me." Li Mu kicked him away and said angrily, "Who said I'm going to kill you?" After kicking Ao Run away, he looked at Ao Qingxin and said indifferently, "Although you were forced, this can't erase your crime. I'll punish you to be my mount for 3 years. Are you willing?" Ao Qingxin said without any hesitation, "Yes, I'm willing to be your mount." Although the dragon race had the dignity of the dragon race, life was always the most important thing. It was only being ridden by this terrifying man for 3 years. 3 years would pass very quickly. At that time, she would immediately fly into the sea. She wouldn't even want her inner core, and would never come out again. Li Mu glanced at her and said, "Don't be my mount. Your master is someone else. You'll know when the time comes." He had once promised to catch a dragon for the Empress to play with as a mount. This little female dragon was just right. With the Empress's personality, she would probably be tired of playing with it after 3 years. At that time, he would give her back her freedom. It could be considered that he had fulfilled another promise to the Empress. Hearing that she wasn't going to be his mount, Ao Qingxin felt a little comforted in her heart. She hoped that her master wasn't a man. It would be best if she was a beautiful young lady. Li Mu looked at the row of tombstones again. Looking at the unfamiliar names on them, he said to Commander Zhang, "I want to build a tombstone for these heroes and engrave their names on it for future generations to revere." Commander Zhang nodded and said, "I'll arrange it. But where should we put this tombstone?" Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "Put it at the border where the people of the Shen Kingdom enter." Great Zhou and the Shen Kingdom had been trading for many years. There was a checkpoint at the border of the South County. When the merchants of the Great Zhou left the border, the people of the Shen Kingdom entered. They had to pass through a small city. On this day, a huge stone tombstone flew through the air and landed in front of this small city located at the border of the Great Zhou and the Shen Kingdom. The stone tombstone was about 10 feet tall. There were mysterious patterns carved on it. There were also small words secretly carved on the tombstone. Under the stone tombstone, there were more than a dozen corpses of the people of the Shen Kingdom kneeling. The Shen Kingdom's guards had already gathered in front of the border because more than a dozen of their own people had been killed. When they saw this scene, they were even more furious. Damn the people of the Zhou Kingdom! How dare they humiliate the soldiers of the Shen Kingdom! Our imperial court is too weak. If we send troops to the Great Zhou, our Shen Kingdom will soon become the most powerful country in the Zhou continent. The emperor of the Zhou Kingdom is actually a woman. How can a country with a woman as the emperor be the most powerful country in the Zhou continent? This title clearly belongs to our Shen Kingdom. They actually humiliated our soldiers like this. I swear, I will kill 10 people of the Zhou Kingdom to avenge them. But the Zhou Kingdom said that if we cross the border, our cultivation will be crippled. If we violate the laws of the Zhou Kingdom, we will be killed without mercy. You coward. This is for the glory of the Shen Kingdom. So what if you die? Two figures stood within the borders of the Great Zhou. All kinds of unbearable words entered their ears. Commander Zhang said, I don't know where these people of the Shen Kingdom get their confidence from. If it wasn't for the fact that war is a waste of manpower and resources, our dynasty has always maintained peace. The Great Zhou Iron Cavalry would have already trampled the Shen Kingdom. Li Mu looked at the furious people of the Shen Kingdom and said lightly, looks like this won't scare them. Commander Zhang said, I have dealt with them for many years. They are just like this. Not only are they blindly confident, but they are also stubborn. Li Mu thought for a while and said, looks like just beheading them isn't enough. If even beheading them wasn't enough, what could be more terrifying than beheading them? Commander Zhang asked doubtfully, what else does Lord Li plan to do? Li Mu took out the corpse sex sound transmission magic tool and channeled his mana. After waiting for a long time, Chen Shi's respectful voice came from the other side. What orders does Grand Elder have? Li Mu said lightly, bring 2 elders and come to the southern county of the Great Zhou to find me. Chapter 509. It would take Chen Shi and the others at least 7 days to get here from Jianghu country. Taking advantage of these few days, Li Mu refined most of the spiritual herbs in his storage space into pills and distributed them to the injured soldiers of the Southern Army. They helped the soldiers of the Southern Army who had their cultivation crippled rebuild their dantian. Although the guards of the Shen country were stubborn, they could see more than a dozen corpses on the border as long as they looked up. It was impossible for them not to be afraid. In recent days, the number of provocations from the people of the Shen country across the border had decreased by more than half. However, there was still a portion of people who were not frightened by Li Mu. Instead, they became even more aggressive and attacked more than a dozen outposts together. When the reinforcements arrived, most of the time, there were only injured soldiers of the Southern Army. The people of the Shen country had long fled. Li Mu asked Ao Run and Ao Qingxin to patrol the border for a few days, but they only caught 3 people. There was no way to stop this phenomenon. It was easy to be a thief but hard to guard against a thief. No one knew where their next target would be. The only thing they could do was to kill them one by one. They would kill until they were completely afraid and would naturally stop. A few days later, Li Mu met Chen Shi, Han Shan, and Sun Qi in the tent. These 3 were the 3 strongest elders of the corpse sect. They were also quite accomplished in the path of refining corpses. The 3 of them knelt on one knee and bowed to Li Mu with cupped fists. They said loudly, Greetings, Grand Elder. Li Mu gestured for them to stand up and asked, How is the situation of the demon country now? Chen Shi said, Ever since the last battle, the Tianlang country has been holed up in their territory and hasn't made any moves. The Jianghu country is absorbing the surrounding demons. Li Mu asked again, What has Phantom Princess been doing recently? Chen Shi said, Ever since Her Majesty returned from the Great Zhou, she has been in seclusion. After asking them a few questions, Li Mu said again, I called you here this time because I have a mission for you. Follow me. Li Mu brought the 3 of them to the Southern Army's Martyrs Monument. At the same time, he asked Commander Zhang to bring the 3 guards of the Shen Kingdom who had attacked the Southern Army's outpost and injured the Southern Army's outpost. The stone stele was erected near the border between the 2 countries. The river was the boundary between the 2 countries. On one side was the Great Zhou, and on the other side was the Shen Kingdom. Both countries had a large number of troops stationed on both sides of the river. When Li Mu and his people gathered on the north bank, the Shen Kingdom's guards on the other side could not help but watch. What do these Zhou people want to do? What do they want to do to Raj, Ka, and Sharma? No, those Zhou people raised their blades at them. Could it be that he wants to kill them? On the north bank, a deputy general said loudly in the official language of the Shen nation, "These 3 people crossed the border and attacked our southern army's outpost. They injured our soldiers and should be executed according to the law. Take this as a warning and don't repeat their mistakes. Execute them." Swish, swish, swish. The executioner waved his blade and the 3 Shen Kingdom's guards were beheaded. Blood sprayed on the ground below the monument. Since the time of the previous emperor of the Great Zhou, the Shen Kingdom had enjoyed many privileges in the Great Zhou. One of the most important privileges was that the Great Zhou had no right to punish the Shen Kingdom citizens. No matter what crimes the Shen Kingdom's soldiers and civilians committed in the Great Zhou, they would be handed over to the Shen Kingdom's imperial court for punishment. The Shen Kingdom naturally would not punish its own citizens. In the past, it would only put on a show and release them. But just now, they had seen with their own eyes that their friends and compatriots were executed by the Zhou Kingdom. Not only did this not frighten them, it made them even angrier. "We will settle this score with you sooner or later. Raj, Ka, and Sharma will not die in vain. We will avenge you. Just you wait. I will drag 10 times the number of Zhou Kingdom citizens to accompany you in death." A large number of Shen Kingdom soldiers looked across the river. Their voices were filled with grief and indignation. Then, another scene occurred across the river that they could not understand. They did not know when it started, but a gray fog suddenly enveloped the corpses of Raj, Ka, and Sharma. Moreover, it continued to spread. After being killed by the Zhou Kingdom's people, the dozen or so corpses of the Shen Kingdom's guards who were kneeling in front of the monument were also enveloped by the gray fog. The gray fog was deathly silent. The noisy Shen Kingdom's guards on the other side of the river also slowly quieted down. The gray fog gave them a strange feeling from the bottom of their hearts. A terrifying atmosphere spread among the Shen Kingdom's army. Ao Run looked at the gray fog from afar and felt extremely uncomfortable. He carefully asked Li Mu, "Master, what are they doing?" Li Mu lightly said, "Refining corpses." Ao Run took a deep breath. These Shen Kingdom's people were too pitiful. Even after death, they could not rest in peace and were even refined into zombies. Although he did not sympathize with these people who had no bottom line compared to him, he still could not help but feel fear from the bottom of his heart. What made him even more afraid was that the way his master looked at those corpses just now was very familiar to him. After Ao Run carefully recalled, his body could not help but tremble. Wasn't that the way his master looked at him when he first captured him? Could it be that at that time, his master also intended to refine him into a corpse? Thinking of this, Ao Run felt a lingering fear. If it was not for his quick-wittedness at that time, perhaps he would have already become an obedient flood dragon corpse. A sense of fear spread throughout his body. Ao Run's legs went soft and he directly knelt down. Li Mu looked at him and asked, "What are you doing?" Ao Run swallowed a mouthful of saliva and knelt on the ground. He conveniently said, "Master, are your legs sore? Let me help you massage them." Ao Qingxin also hurriedly ran over and stood behind Li Mu. He said, "Let me help you massage your shoulders." The longer she stayed by this man's side, the more terrifying things she saw. In the past, she thought that death would be the end of everything. She did not expect that death was not the end. She could not imagine that after death, the corpses would still have to suffer such torture. Beside Commander Zhang, a secretary's throat moved. He asked, "General, they are already dead. Is it too inhumane for us to do this?" Commander Zhang looked at him and coldly asked, "Humanity? What is humanity?" "Humanity is our soldiers, our people. Do we have to endlessly suffer the harassment of the Shen Kingdom's people? Let me tell you what humanity is. Humanity is to do our best to protect the people of our Great Zhou. Anyone who dares to offend our Great Zhou will have to pay a painful price. Even if they die, their corpses will continue to atone for their crimes." The secretary swallowed a mouthful of saliva and lowered his head. He did not ask any more questions. 2 hours later, on the south bank, hundreds of Shen Kingdom's guards waited anxiously. The gray fog on the other side of the bank finally dissipated. In the gray fog, besides the 3 great Zhou people, there were also a dozen figures standing in neat rows. Their bodies exuded a strange aura. When the Shen Kingdom's guards saw these people, their expressions changed greatly. Is that Sharma? He was clearly dead. How did he come back to life? Raj and Kadi are also inside. What happened to them? Ganesh, Sudhir. The dead have all come back to life. What did the great Zhou people do to them? Is that Lord Bharat? He was a 5th realm expert 3 years ago. He actually died at the hands of the great Zhou people. It's too scary. They are already dead, but they can't rest in peace. At this time, the expressions of the Shen Kingdom's guards had changed from anger to fear. Their friends and companions could not rest in peace after their deaths. They had become such terrifying existences. This was even more frightening than the war with the great Zhou. Chen Shi and the other 2 shook the bells in their hands. The zombies refined from the corpses of the Shen Kingdom's prisoners hopped away with them. What was going on during these 2 hours was only the initial sacrificial refining. Only after all the sacrificial refining was completed, would the zombies be able to unleash their strongest strength. Li Mu looked at the reactions of the Shen Kingdom's people on the other side of the bank and turned to leave. He wanted to refine those people into zombies in front of them. He wanted them to see clearly that the consequences of invading the Great Zhou were even more terrifying than death. In the tent, Li Mu said to Commander Zhang, "Have the army's secretary write an official document and have the South County's local government post it everywhere in the city. In the future, every time an invader is killed, everyone must be informed." 7 days later, the sentries of the South Army's various outposts reported that the Shen Kingdom's people did not make any more movements. There were also no disturbances in the counties. This series of thunderous methods finally completely suppressed the Shen Kingdom's people. Li Mu asked the Empress through the spirit conch. In the ancestral temple, the psychic power cauldron in the South County shone brightly again. Although it had not returned to normal, it was only a matter of time. After severely punishing the people of the Shen Kingdom, the psychic power of the people of the South County would greatly increase. As long as the stability of the South County could be maintained, the matter of the psychic power could be resolved. Although he had only been in the South County for less than half a month and had already resolved these 2 problems, Li Mu did not plan to go back just like that. He could not swallow the anger of the Shen Kingdom. Great Zhou did not have any other thoughts about the Shen Kingdom. Firstly, Great Zhou's territory was large enough and did not have much interest in occupying the Shen Kingdom. Otherwise, the Shen Kingdom would have been incorporated into Great Zhou's territory 100 years ago. Secondly, the Yong Kingdom, the Jing Kingdom, the Liang Kingdom, and the other kingdoms had similar cultures with Great Zhou. They shared a common language, and it was difficult to distinguish the citizens of each country from their appearance. However, the Shen Kingdom was different. The appearance of the people of the Shen Kingdom was very different from that of the other countries, and their cultural customs were also very different. To the countries of Zhuzhou they were a foreign race. Great Zhou only wanted to protect its own territory and had no interest in occupying the land of a foreign race. However, since the establishment of Great Zhou, the Shen Kingdom had been tirelessly testing the boundaries of death. Whenever Great Zhou was in trouble, the Shen Kingdom would take advantage of the situation and disturb the psychic power of the people of the South County. Although it would not cause much harm to Great Zhou, it was disgusting enough. Li Mu could not lead troops to attack the Shen Kingdom. After all, although the Shen Kingdom's strength was not as strong as Great Zhou's, it was not a pushover. Although Great Zhou could win, it would also give other people with bad intentions an opportunity to take advantage of. Once there were enemies in many places, no matter how powerful an empire was, it could be worn down. However, Li Mu could not swallow this anger. This matter needed to be considered at length. There was still one more thing to do. Li Mu sat in the tent and said, "Xianxia, come in." As soon as he finished speaking, a figure rushed in. Ao Xianxia stood in the tent nervously, waiting for Li Mu's orders. Li Mu looked up at her and asked, "You said that your Naiden was stolen by someone in the Shen Kingdom?" Ao Xianxia immediately raised her right hand and said, "I swear that what I said is true." Li Mu did not doubt her words. There was no doubt about the strength of the dragon race. If her Naiden was still there, Li Mu might not have been able to take her down so easily. Giving the Empress a dragon without a Naiden would show that he did not take her seriously. Before giving it to the Empress, he needed to find her Naiden first. Li Mu asked, Who stole your Naiden? Where is he now? How strong is he? Xianxia looked up at Li Mu and was stunned for a moment. Then she said, I don't know where he is now, but I can sense the location of the Naiden. His strength should be at the 6th realm of you humans. Li Mu walked to her side and said calmly, Take me to him. Xin Kingdom. Southern Bang. Xianxia sat on a flying boat in the sky. It was hard to describe what she was feeling. Although she had fallen into the hands of a human again, this human did not do anything to her. Instead, he took her to find her Naiden. This made her, who thought that she had fallen into the claws of a demon, feel quite disappointed. Li Mu stood at the bow of the boat. He did not turn his head and asked, How far is it? Xianxia pointed ahead and said, It's just ahead. I can sense that we are getting closer and closer to the Naiden. Li Mu accelerated the flying boat. When they reached the sky above a certain plain, the flying boat suddenly stopped and rapidly descended. Outside a certain village, in the dense grass, a woman's screams and cries for help could be heard. The 5 men laughed obscenely and violently tore off her clothes. The woman's heart-wrenching voice was filled with despair. Finally, it alerted a family at the entrance of the village. A man ran out and stood outside the bushes. He shouted, What are you doing? The 5 men looked back at him and pointed at the woman on the grass. The man looked at her exposed skin and a lustful light flashed in his eyes. He took off his long robe and slowly walked in. When the woman saw this, her eyes were filled with despair. However, just as the 6 men were about to tear off the last layer of her clothes, their bodies suddenly left the ground and slowly floated in the air. A young man and woman slowly landed on the ground. Li Mu reached out and a piece of clothing appeared in his hand. The clothing automatically flew over and covered the woman. The woman hurriedly used the clothing to cover her body. Li Mu looked at the 6 men. They felt a sharp pain between their legs and then fainted. Xianxia stood behind Li Mu and secretly sized him up. She realized that she could not see through this man. The Great Zhou and the Shen Kingdom were clearly enemies. The people of the Shen Kingdom had done so many terrible things in the Great Zhou. He killed the people of the Shen Kingdom cleanly without even blinking. Yet, he was willing to save this woman from the Shen Kingdom. She did not know what he was thinking. Alicia, Alicia. A man's voice came from afar. The woman used the clothing Li Mu gave her to wrap her body and ran into the distance. Soon, she came back with another man. She knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Li Mu and Xianxia in gratitude. Before coming to the Shen Kingdom, Li Mu had already learned the language of the Shen Kingdom through the jade slip that Commander Zhang gave him. For cultivators like them, there was no language barrier at all. Li Mu did not say anything in the face of their gratitude. He took Xianxia and flew back into the sky. He killed the people of the Shen Kingdom for the sake of the soldiers and innocent people of the Great Zhou. He saved this woman from the Shen Kingdom only because of his own conscience. However, before he left, he took another look at the young man. A strange look flashed across his eyes. Chapter 5:10. On the flying boat, Xianxia seemed to have sensed something. He said to Li Mu, That person is very strange. Li Mu asked casually, What did you see? Xianxia said, Spiritual qi. He has gathered a lot of spiritual qi. Li Mu stood at the bow of the boat and looked down. Under the influence of Old Wang, he had read a lot of books. Of course, what he saw was not only spiritual qi. For a person who had never cultivated before to have such dense spiritual qi around him, it could only mean that he had a special physique. It was very likely that he was a rare innate spiritual body. As the name implied, he could use his body to attract spiritual qi. This was a physique more suitable for cultivation than the 5 elements physique, pure yin and pure yang. Xianxia was an innate spiritual body. With this talent and the inheritance of his sect, he was able to become the headmaster of the Fulu school. If that young man from the Shen Kingdom was born in the Great Zhou, he would definitely be a genius that all the major sects would fight over. Unfortunately, he was born in the Shen Kingdom. Looking at his clothes, he should be the lowest of the low. The Shen Kingdom's royal family divided the people into 4 classes. The cultivators of the sects in the royal family were the first class, the nobles were the first class, and the merchants were the first class. The common people were the lowest class. The common people could not receive education and could not cultivate. No matter how talented they were, It was futile. Li Mu had already realized that although talent could make cultivation twice the result with half the effort, the decisive factors were one's hard work, two's luck, and of course, the most important was the inheritance. A person with an innate spiritual body cultivating for 100 years was not as good as a person with mediocre talent receiving a strand of emperor's qi. After all, a person's 100 years of hard work could not compare to the years of hard work of hundreds of millions of people in the Great Zhou. On the path of cultivation, most of the so-called top geniuses would eventually become ordinary people. He quickly put this matter to the back of his mind. At this time, Ao Qingxin suddenly pointed to a short mountain in front of them and said excitedly, "I feel it. My inner core is there." Li Mu stood on the flying boat and looked at the short mountain in the distance. At the top of the hill, there was a magnificent temple. A row of stone steps extended from the top of the hill to the foot of the hill. On the stone steps, there were many people slowly climbing up. Every few steps, they would kneel down and kowtow. From their bodies, there was a faint aura of telekinesis. Within the Shen kingdom, sects flourished. This was the origin of Buddhism, and countless sects flourished here. Even the Shen kingdom's royal family used sects to control the Shen kingdom. Although the Shen kingdom was not as big as the Great Zhou, it had a large population and was very suitable for the development of sections. This was obviously the location of a sect. Before Li Mu and Xianxia could get close, a figure suddenly flew out from the temple. It was a tall and sturdy man with bulging muscles. He didn't have any hair on his head and held a Buddhist staff in his hand. He frowned at Ao Weishin and asked, "Evil dragon, what are you doing here instead of guarding the lake?" Ao Qingxin stood on the flying boat, turned around and looked at Li Mu, then summoned up his courage and said, "Give me back my inner core." The bald man sneered and said, "If you want the inner core, come and get it yourself." Xianxia looked at Li Mu again. Li Mu said indifferently, "If he wants you to get it, go get it yourself. Don't worry, I will watch over you from the side." When she had her Naiden, she wasn't this baldy's opponent. Now that she had lost her Naiden, she couldn't beat him. But at this moment, she didn't have any other choice. She could only summon 2 pitchforks and bite the bullet to attack the baldy. Li Mu stretched out his hand, and the shrunken Dao bell floated in his palm and kept spinning. "Go!" Li Mu waved his hand, and the Dao bell suddenly flew to Xianxia and merged with her body. Xianxia only felt that something had happened to her body, but the bald man's staff was already smashing towards her. She could only raise her pitchforks to block. Clang! The staff and pitchforks collided, and there was a deafening sound. Xianxia's body floated in the air, but the bald man was bounced back with his staff. Xianxia was stunned for a moment, then she spat out a mouthful of dragon's breath without hesitation. The bald man hurriedly responded. He waved his sleeves and hid his body behind his wide monk's robes. But this treasured robe was still burned with 2 big holes. He was shocked and angry, and his hands formed a seal. At this moment, the young man's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. "Formation." As soon as he said this, his body was suddenly bound by the power of heaven and earth. He couldn't move, and the spell he was about to cast was also interrupted. Although he immediately used his spiritual power to break free, the dragon girl didn't let go of this opportunity. A pitchfork pierced towards his head. A golden light burst out from the top of his head and bounced the pitchfork away, but he was also injured. Blood flowed down from the top of his head, blurring his vision. Ever since he stepped into the 6th level, he hadn't been injured for a long time. At this moment, his anger wasn't on the dragon girl, but on the man behind her. If this person hadn't been causing trouble at the side, he would have taken down the dragon girl long ago. He formed a seal with one hand and pushed a palm towards Li Mu. In the void in front of the two, an illusory palm print suddenly appeared and pressed down on Li Mu. At the same time, the space Li Mu was in seemed to be completely sealed. Palm prints appeared in all directions around him, sealing off all his escape routes. When the palm prints arrived, Li Mu's body suddenly disappeared. The many palm prints resisted and melted, and Li Mu's body appeared again. As long as the opponent wasn't at the 7th level or the peak of the 6th level, he could escape into the Demon Emperor's space at any time to avoid the enemy's attack. The bald man's attack didn't hurt Li Mu, and Ao Shoshin was already charging over with her pitchforks. While he was dealing with the dragon, there were thunderous roars above his head, strong winds blowing, and thousands of swords shooting out. He was in a sorry state, and his treasured robes were already riddled with holes. The young man's spell was strange, and he didn't know what was up with the dragon girl. Although her attacks weren't much stronger, her defense was more than 10 times stronger. He couldn't break through her defense at all. If this continued, he might be exhausted to death by the man and dragon here. He had originally prepared that dragon inner core for the treasure hunt at the bottom of the sea. Now, it seemed like he had to return it. He waved his hand, and a white inner core the size of a pigeon egg flew out and was swallowed by Ao Shoshin. The inner core returned to her body, and her aura soared. Soon, she reached the peak of the 5th level. The bald man regulated his body as he said, "I've given you the item. You can leave now, right?" Li Mu didn't think of directly killing this bald man. Which 6th level elite didn't have a trump card? He couldn't take him down in a short time. Moreover, if he stayed in a stalemate with him for too long, it would be very disadvantageous for them in the Shin Nation's territory if he summoned the other elites of the Shin Nation. However, it wasn't his style to just walk away like this. Li Mu looked at him and said calmly, "You snatched someone else's item, and it's fine just to return it?" The bald man asked in a low voice, "What else do you want?" Li Mu said, "You bullied my people. You have to pay the price, right?" The bald man's face darkened. After a moment of silence, he waved his hand at Li Mu, and a white light shot out. Li Mu reached out to catch it, and a jade scroll appeared in his hand. The bald man said, "This is a map of an ancient secret realm that I obtained in my early years. I'll give it to you." Li Mu used his psychic power to check the jade scroll, and found that there was indeed a map imprinted in it. The location marked on the map should be in the Southern Sea. No wonder this bald man wanted Shoshin's inner core. Without the dragon inner core, it was very difficult for humans to move in the deep sea. Every time they dived a certain distance, they would need to use their transcendence energy to resist the water pressure. Below several thousand meters, 6th level elites would need to use all their transcendence energy to barely move. If they encountered any threat, they would be doomed. He kept the jade scroll and said, "Shoshin, let's go." Ao Shoshin, who had regained her inner core, was in a good mood. She immediately flew onto Li Mu's flying ship. The bald man looked at the flying ship leaving, and his face darkened. He turned into a ray of light again and flew into the temple. The believers on the mountain path did not know that a great battle had happened in the sky. They were still climbing the mountain and praying devoutly. On the flying ship, Li Mu handed the jade scroll to Shoshin. After Shoshin checked it, she nodded and said, "That is indeed the Southern Sea. However, it is not easy to find. The sea is very big, much bigger than the countries on land. It is very, very difficult to find a place in the sea, and it is also very easy to encounter danger." The ancient secret realm was indeed very attractive to Li Mu. There would often be Dao arts inheritances from the previous era there. However, Li Mu did not have the time to look for them now. He still had to settle the matter of the Shen country. The arrogant group of Shen country people at the border was temporarily intimidated. However, according to their temperament, it would not be long before they would forget this painful memory. The flying ship landed outside a city in the northern bang of the Shen country. Ao Shoshin asked Li Mu in confusion, "Are we not going back?" Li Mu said indifferently, "There is no hurry." In the past, his understanding of the Shen country was all from the mouths of others. Since he had come to the Shen country this time, he wanted to see for himself what kind of country it was. The difference in appearance between the two of them and the Shen country people was too great. Li Mu and her changed a little, and they did not seem that special. In the small city, Li Mu and Shoshin walked side by side. Even though she had changed into the clothes of the Shen country people and hid her dragon horns, it was still difficult to hide her natural beauty. Walking on the street, from time to time, men would cast strange looks at her. It was human nature to love beauty. For a woman like her, walking on the streets of any city in the Great Zhou, there would be a high number of people turning their heads. However, the behavior of the people of the Great Zhou and the people of the Shen country were completely different. When the people of the Great Zhou saw a beautiful woman, most of them looked at her with admiration. When they were discovered by a woman, they would also look away in embarrassment. However, the people of the Shen country people would not do that. They would silently look at a woman with naked eyes. If it was just one or two, it would be fine. However, when most of the men on the street looked at her with such eyes, even the powerful dragon girl hid behind Li Mu. She was not afraid, but disgusted and disgusted. She had never seen such people in such a country. The city was filled with a foul smell. People were relieving themselves on the street and looking at women with very rude eyes. Animal feces could be seen everywhere. In a river that flowed through the city, some people were bathing, some were drinking water, and some were burning corpses. Ugh! Seeing the filthy river, Shoshin covered her mouth and almost vomited. As a member of the water race, as long as she thought about the existence of such a river, she felt uncomfortable all over. She grabbed Li Mu's wrist and begged, "Let's go back," Li Mu said. "If you want to go back, then go back first." Ao Shoshin had no choice but to continue walking in the city with Li Mu. She did not dare to go back alone, nor could she go back alone. What if he thought she wanted to take the opportunity to escape? What if she met that bald man again? She still felt safe following Li Mu. The two of them walked on the street. When they passed by an alley, a few men behind them suddenly came forward and surrounded them. Li Mu did not even look at them and walked straight through the crowd. The men did not expect him to be so tactful. They surrounded the beautiful woman and forced her into the alley. Soon, Ao Isin walked over from behind and caught up with Li Mu. With a light snort, he spat out 2 balls of flame from his nose. He looked at Li Mu and asked, "This country is too disgusting. Your great show is so powerful. Why don't you destroy them?" Li Mu said, "They're only disgusting themselves now. If we destroy them, won't the great show be disgusted as well?" It was best to let the people of Shen settle the matter themselves. Li Mu originally thought that with so many people in Shen being treated as lowly commoners and being bullied like this, the people would definitely be angry. However, after seeing it for himself, he realized that they seemed to recognize this kind of status from the bottom of their hearts. The people of Great Zhou did not believe in this kind of thing at all. The people living in that land believed that the imperial court was not benevolent and should be overthrown to establish a new one. They believed that the imperial court should serve the people and not enslave them. The people of Shen did not give Li Mu this kind of feeling. The lowly commoners of Shan who were being bullied were also bullying others. Women had no status here. From the top to the bottom, from the commoners to the officials, whether it was in the countryside or in the small alleys of the city, there were endless cases of rape. It was very difficult to see women on the streets. However, whenever a woman walked by, there would be many men casting unscrupulous wolf-like gazes at her. In 3 days, Li Mu and Xianxia had passed through 4 small cities and more than a dozen villages. They had encountered dozens of roadblocks. Although they had met many good people, evil had become the norm. The few good people were easy to be ignored. After personally experiencing the local customs of Shen, Li Mu released the flying boat again. The two of them stood on the boat. The flying boat quickly flew across the sky, heading toward the southern county of Great Zhou. Xianxia stood behind Li Mu. At a certain moment, the flying boat suddenly stopped. Her body leaned forward and bumped into Li Mu. She hugged her chest and asked nervously, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Li Mu stood at the bow of the boat and looked into the distance. His face was filled with shock. Even standing here, he could feel that the power of heaven and earth in that direction had suddenly become extremely violent. Even though Li Mu was experienced and knowledgeable, he could not imagine what kind of supernatural power could trigger such a huge amount of power of heaven and earth. With a heart full of doubts, Li Mu controlled the flying boat again and sped forward. Chapter 5:11. Shen Kingdom, North Kingdom. In a village with only a few dozen families. In the Shen Kingdom, the villages and tribes were self-governed. All the affairs in the village, including the villagers' life and death, were in the hands of the village elders. Although this made a small number of people have too much power, it also saved a lot of manpower for the Shen Kingdom's imperial court. At this moment, a murder case was being tried in this village. Outside the simple thatched courtroom, dozens of villagers stood outside, craning their necks to watch. Inside the courtroom, 2 strong men were holding down a skinny man. The skinny man was still struggling. One of them hit the back of his leg with a thick wooden stick, forcing him to kneel down heavily. An old man with white hair and beard wearing a hat sat in the chair in front. He held a wooden stick that symbolized power and knocked it hard on the ground. With a dark expression, he gritted his teeth and said, "Aragu, you actually dared to murder my nephew Tuoji. According to the village rules, I will now sentence you to death by stoning. What do you have to say?" Aragu was pressed to the ground and still struggled. His eyes were bloodshot as he said with extreme grief and indignation, Tuoji wanted to rape my fiancé and tripped and got injured. You didn't punish him, but you want to kill me. God is watching. Everything you did when you were alive will go to hell after you die. The old man's eyes flashed coldly. You said Tuoji was injured, but someone clearly saw you hit him. Bring the witnesses here. 2 men walked in and pointed at the skinny man kneeling on the ground. It's him. We saw him hit Tuoji with our own eyes. The skinny man's eyes were filled with grief. These 2 men wanted to rape his fiancée, but the immortals destroyed their manhood. They held a grudge and took revenge on him. Right now, he was filled with endless anger, but he couldn't fight back. The old man knocked his cane hard on the ground and said sternly, Aragu, as a lowly peasant, you actually dared to hurt a noble. According to the law, you should be sentenced to death. Now, I sentence you to death by stoning. Men, take him away and execute him immediately. The skinny man was taken out and pushed into a pit. Someone had filled the hole with sand and soil. Everything below his waist was buried in the ground and he couldn't move. Not far away, there was a pile of rocks. The big ones were the size of fists and the small ones were the size of a baby's head. These were used for the execution. When someone was sentenced to be stoned, the villagers would line up to throw stones at him until he was completely dead. This kind of punishment was very cruel, but the cruelest thing was that the victim's family and friends were also required to participate in the execution. Just as Aragu was about to be executed, a woman rushed over crazily and shouted, Aragu, Aragu! However, as soon as she approached, she was forcefully pulled away. A man limped over to the sand pit. Half of Aragu's body was already buried in the ground, and his hands were tied behind his back. The man had a mocking expression on his face. He patted Aragu's face heavily and said, Aragu, don't worry and die. I will help you take good care of Alicia. Ah, you lowly peasant, let go. 2 of Toji's fingers were bitten. Cold sweat poured down his forehead. He kicked Aragu's chest. When he pulled his hand back, his fingers were bleeding. He wrapped his injured fingers with a handkerchief and strode out of the sand pit. Gritting his teeth, he said, Smash him to death. Smash him to death. The execution began. Everyone picked up stones from the ground and threw them at the sand pit. Buried in the sand, Aragu couldn't dodge. Soon, his head was bleeding. Toji still couldn't vent his anger. He ordered the 2 men behind him, Take Alicia to my house. I want this peasant to see the consequences of offending a noble. His 2 men received the order and forcefully dragged Alicia away in front of dozens of villagers. Buried in the sand pit, Araga's eyes were bloodshot. He roared like a beast, but he was trapped in the sand pit and couldn't move at all. On the other side, Alicia used all her strength to break free from the 2 men. She looked back at Aragu and said sadly, Aragu, Alicia will still be your wife in the next life. With that, she slammed her head against the stone wall. A blood-red flower bloomed on the wall. Alicia's body fell limply to the ground. Toji's subordinate reached out and touched Alicia's nose. He stood up and said in disbelief, Lord Toji, she's dead. Toji waved his hand unhappily and said angrily, This stupid woman. So what if she's dead? She's just a peasant. Drag her down and bury her later. With that, he crossed his arms and watched coldly as everyone executed Aragu. After Alicia committed suicide, the figure in the sandpit let out a roar and stood there in a daze, not moving at all. Hard rocks fell on him, but he didn't dodge or dodge. He just stared blankly at Alicia's corpse. At a certain moment, all of the executioners, including Toji, suddenly shivered inexplicably. The surrounding temperature seemed to drop. They felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on their chests. In the sky, the clouds changed. A gust of wind blew on the ground, blowing sand and rocks. Everyone couldn't care less about the execution. They all covered their faces with their sleeves and hid behind the stone wall. In the sand pit, half of Araga's body was buried. He broke the ropes on his hands and pushed himself out of the sand pit with both hands. His eyes turned blood red. He took a step forward and disappeared. The next time he appeared, he was already in front of Toji. Toji opened his mouth wide in shock. Before he could say anything, Aragu punched him in the head. Bang! Toji's head exploded like a watermelon. With 2 more bangs, his 2 subordinates also died on the spot. Seeing this, Everyone fled in terror. Aragu walked to Alicia's corpse. The blood in his eyes slowly faded. He squatted down slowly and hugged his head in pain, choking with sobs. Soon, a figure flew out of the village. It was a man in a white robe. He walked in the air. When the villagers saw him, they all knelt down and shouted, "High Priest!" The man pointed with both hands. The ground under Araga's feet suddenly became extremely soft, sinking him into it. Then the ground became hard again. Only Araga's head was left outside. The man in the white robe stood in the air and said sternly, "How dare you, lowly commoner? How dare you?" Under the ground, Aragu took a deep breath. The ground that trapped him split open, and he jumped out. Seeing this, the man in the white robe's expression changed. He grabbed a spear on his back and stabbed it at Aragu. However, Aragu reached out and grabbed it. He used a bit of force and took the spear from the man in the white robe. He bent it and threw it aside. The man in the white robe couldn't do this himself. Seeing this, he was scared out of his wits and fled as if his life depended on it. Just then, 2 more figures descended from the sky. Li Mu didn't expect to see this young man from the Xin nation again. What surprised him was that when they first met, he was just a mortal. Now, he already had the aura of a 4th realm. It seemed that the change in the power of heaven and earth just now was because of this person. Although this young man didn't cultivate, he had clearly activated the power of heaven and earth to fill his body. Back then, Xiaoyu used the incantation to move heaven and earth and instantly advanced to the 5th realm. This young man from the Shen nation's situation was completely because of his special constitution. His innate spiritual body awakened once, and it was also his only chance to fill his body. However, because he didn't cultivate and didn't know anything about cultivation, he only had the realm but didn't have the strength of a 4th realm. After the young man glanced at Li Mu and Ao Chengxin, he looked down at the woman's corpse on the ground. Without hesitation, he slammed his head against the stone wall beside him. Boom! With a crash, the stone wall collapsed. He was still standing in the same place. He lowered his head and looked at his hand, then touched his head. His face was blank. Li Mu asked in the language of the Xin nation, "What are you doing?" The young man looked at Li Mu with sorrow in his eyes. He said, "Alicia is dead. I want to go with her. Even if we become ghosts, we want to be together." Alicia was the woman from the Xin nation that Li Mu had casually saved last time. At this moment, her corpse was lying on the ground in front of Li Mu. Li Mu looked at the corpse on the ground and said to the young man, "Since you two love each other so much, you don't have to die." He stretched out 2 fingers and swiped them in front of the young man's eyes. Araga realized that he had seen Alicia again. He ran over excitedly and wanted to hug her. However, he passed through her body. Li Mu walked over and said, "She's just a ghost now. She needs to cultivate before she can reform her body. Forget it. Since we're fated to meet again, I'll help you again." He formed a seal with his hands. After a wave of the power of heaven and earth, Alicia's body slowly solidified. She was already dead. Li Mu couldn't resurrect her. He could only help her reform her body temporarily. The man and woman hugged each other again. They were very excited. Some things didn't discriminate between countries. Li Mu was moved by the feelings of this man and woman. Since he was already meddling in other people's business, he might as well help them to the end. Li Mu planned to teach them cultivation. With Araga's talent, it would be a waste if he didn't cultivate. Although Alicia didn't have much talent, as long as she cultivated to the 3rd realm, they could be a normal couple. He touched their foreheads with his finger and transmitted the relevant information into their minds. "Thank you, benefactor." The couple knelt on the ground again and kowtowed to Li Mu to thank him. Araga kowtowed a few times. He looked up and asked Li Mu, "Benefactor, you're from the Great Show, right?" Li Mu nodded and didn't deny it. Aragu said longingly, "I heard that everyone in the Great Show is equal. If the nobles break the law, they'll be punished. Anyone can cultivate. Women will also be protected. Compared to the Great Show, this is a kingdom of demons." Li Mu said, "The Great Show wasn't as beautiful as you said from the beginning. It's because of the wise empress leadership that the Great Show of today became what it is today." Aragu lowered his head and said, "Our empress will only promulgate laws that benefit the nobles. They won't care about lowly people like us." Li Mu looked at him and said meaningfully, You have to create a happy life with your own hands. If all the oppressed people of the Shen Kingdom unite, they can also change the world. After saying that, he said lightly, "Happy, let's go." 2 streams of light streaked across the sky again. Araga watched them leave. When the light disappeared from his sight, he looked down at his hands and muttered, "All the oppressed people unite." When he returned to the South County, Li Mu already had a preliminary idea about the Shen Kingdom. Although the 2 countries often had conflicts recently, neither the Great Zhou nor the Shen Kingdom would easily start a war with the other country. The Shen Kingdom didn't have the strength to start a war. Although the Great Zhou had the strength, there was no need to start a war. After all, for a long time, the national policy of the Great Zhou was to develop peacefully. It was best to let the Shen Kingdom fall into chaos. Logically speaking, with the situation in the Shen Kingdom, countless people were widely oppressed. When they were oppressed to the extreme, they would resist. Such a regime would be difficult to stabilize. However, the most oppressed people in the Shen Kingdom were mostly limited by sections. The slave mentality was deeply rooted. They were willing to be oppressed and naturally wouldn't resist. Moreover, they couldn't cultivate. Even if they wanted to resist, they didn't have the strength to do so. What they needed was guidance. Although these people didn't have the strength, their psychokinesis was very useful. Li Mu could tell that Aragu was different from the other people at the bottom. However, he was too weak and couldn't be of much use for the time being. He had only planted a seed in Aragu's heart. Now, he needed someone with absolute strength and ability to infiltrate the Shen Kingdom and complete this matter. There were many experts that the Consecration Department could mobilize. They could fight, but no one in the entire Consecration Department could take on the responsibility of guiding the oppressed citizens of the Shen nation. If it really couldn't be done, Li Mu would have to do it himself. However, unless it was absolutely necessary, Li Mu didn't want to do it himself. This meant that he would have to stay in the Shen Kingdom forever. This was something Li Mu was more resistant to. Speaking of which, the officials in the imperial court were the most suitable for this kind of thing. Their cultivation might not be very high, but they had been in the imperial court for many years. They were all old foxes. They definitely had their ways of doing this kind of thing. However, it would be difficult for them to gain a foothold in the Shen Kingdom if they didn't have the strength. This matter could only be discussed at length. The matter in the South County was temporarily settled. Li Mu left Ao Run here to ensure that the border waterways were safe. He returned to the divine capital with Xianxia. He planned to discuss it with the Empress slowly. However, before they reached the divine capital, Li Mu's expression suddenly changed on the flying boat. Just now, he suddenly felt that one of his soul clones attached to the 8 realms 6 demonic corpses suddenly lost connection with his primordial spirit. Immediately after, the second soul clones also mysteriously disappeared. Li Mu left the 10 demonic corpses with Phantom Princess. Although Li Mu couldn't use his soul clones to control them, there was always an extremely weak connection between his soul clones and his primordial spirit. The disappearance of the connection meant that something had happened to the demonic corpses. Li Mu stood on the flying boat. After hesitating for a moment, he changed directions and headed straight for the Thousand Fox Nation. Chapter 5:12. Life Continent. Yao Nation. Between the towering mountains and steep ridges, a huge white dragon flew at a low altitude. Sensing the unique aura of the dragon clan, countless monsters in the mountains trembled. Under the pressure of the bloodline, no matter if it was a small monster that had yet to transform or a great monster with a high cultivation base, a deep fear emerged from the bottom of their hearts. Li Mu sat cross-legged on the dragon's head, holding the dragon's horn and exerting a little force in one direction. Xianxia understood his meaning and changed direction a little, continuing to fly forward. A real dragon's flying speed was much faster than Li Mu's flying boat. After many days of getting along, Li Mu's relationship with this little female dragon had improved greatly. She was now willing to take the initiative to carry Li Mu. The dragon clan kept their promise. She promised to be his mount for 3 years. Along the way, she really didn't have the slightest intention of escaping. The mountain in front of them gradually became familiar. Li Mu pointed to the tallest mountain in the distance and said, "That's it. Thousand Fox Nation. Imperial Palace." A huge white dragon descended from the sky and landed on the square in front of the palace, causing countless people to be shocked. Soon, more than a dozen figures flew over and surrounded Xianxia and Li Mu, who had returned to their human forms. They looked nervous and pointed their weapons at the two of them. The battle was about to break out at any moment. The next moment, when everyone saw who had come, they immediately put away their weapons and cupped their fists respectfully. "Greetings, State Preceptor." Xianxia looked at Li Mu and then at the respectful monsters. She was puzzled. She didn't understand. He was clearly a subject of the Great Show. How could he be so respected in the Yao nation? Li Mu looked at a fox demon and asked, "Where's the queen?" The fox demon said, "The queen has been in seclusion for several months. Lord 6 and Lord 9 are in charge of everything in Thousand Fox Nation now." Li Mu said, "Let them come to see me." When they went to invite Hu Lu and Hu Jiao, Li Mu collected the telekinesis from the two statues. After the psyche power merged into his body, the mana in his body increased slightly. The further he cultivated, the more psyche power he needed. The amount of psyche power he could get from daily worship was very little, but it was better than nothing. If Li Mu cultivated by himself, he was afraid that it would take at least 10 days to half a month to have such an effect. Soon, two figures flew out from the mountain covered by the spirit-gathering array. Hu Lu looked at Li Mu and said in surprise, "Why are you here all of a sudden?" "I'll call the queen out." "No need." Li Mu waved his hand. This time, he didn't come to the Yao Kingdom to have a private meeting with Huan Ji. He had serious business to attend to. He went straight to the point and asked, "Where are the demon corpses I left here?" Hu Lu explained, "Lord Huan Ji left the 2 level 7 demon corpses to guard Thousand Fox Nation. The remaining 8 level 6 demon corpses followed the commanders to subdue the major demon factions." Li Mu could sense the 2 level 7 demon corpses. They were underground in Thousand Fox Nation. Li Mu could vaguely determine the location of the other 8 level 6 demon corpses due to the distance. As for the other two, he couldn't sense them no matter how hard he tried. Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "Contact the commanders with the demon corpses and ask them about the situation of the demon corpses." Hu Lu and Hu Jiao didn't ask much and quickly contacted the commanders. They could contact everyone except for the 2 demon corpses. Hu Jiao frowned and asked curiously, "Where are Xianxia and Yingxi? I remember that they went to subdue the Black Panther tribe. The Black Panther tribe isn't very strong. Why haven't they responded yet?" Li Mu asked, "In which direction is the Black Panther tribe?" Hu Lu said, "Southeast." Li Mu said straightforwardly, "Give me a map and stay here." "Xianxia, come with me." The two flew up. Hu Jiao sighed softly and said, "Why did he get another dragon to ride? And it's a female dragon. Could it be that the 2 snake beauties can no longer satisfy him?" Hu Lu knocked his head and said, "Don't complain. Go and ask Lord Huan Ji to come out of seclusion." Hu Jiao said, "Didn't you hear what he said? He said there's no need to call Lord Huan Ji." Hu Lu glanced at him and said, "Why do you listen to him so much? If he says there's no need, then there's no need. If he leaves when Lord Huan Ji comes out of seclusion, you'll be finished." Then she walked toward the depths of the palace, where Lord Huan Ji was in seclusion. At the same time, in the southeast of Thousand Fox Country, Li Mu rode on Xianxia and flew slowly at a low altitude. Xiong 3, Yingxi, and the 2 monster corpses disappeared in this direction. Li Mu followed the mark on the map and headed toward the Black Panther tribe. Not long after, Li Mu and Xianxia landed on a mountain top. There were already more than 10 Black Panther demons standing there. One of the 5th Realm Panther demons knelt on one knee and said loudly, "The Black Panther tribe is willing to submit to Thousand Fox Country. Please take us in, Your Majesty." Li Mu frowned slightly. He looked at the leader of the Black Panther demons and asked, "Have Commander Xiong 3 and Commander Yingxi been here?" Hearing this, the Black Panther demon shook his head blankly and said, "I haven't seen them." Li Mu frowned even harder. Xiong 3 and Yingxi came to subdue the Black Panther tribe, but they disappeared mysteriously before coming here. Judging from the Black Panther tribe's reaction, they didn't seem to be lying. Li Mu looked at them and said calmly, "Go to Thousand Fox Country and register yourselves." With that, he and Xianxia left immediately. The Black Panther demon had been to Thousand Fox Country before and had long yearned for that place with abundant spirit chi. He had also seen the statue of the Grand Tutor, and knew that the Grand Tutor was highly respected in Thousand Fox Country. However, seeing the Grand Tutor leave on a dragon with his own eyes was still a huge blow to him. The Black Panther tribe had probably followed a powerful master this time. Xianxia flew slowly in the sky. Li Mu had a thoughtful look on his face. To be able to trap 2 6th realm demonic corpses in Yao country without a sound, it had to be someone with 7th realm cultivation. Could it be the Blue Wolf King's doing? Or was it the Black Snake tribe and Flying Bear tribe's suppression of Thousand Fox Country? Just as Li Mu was pondering, his nascent spirit suddenly sensed the existence of 2 demonic corpses. However, that feeling strangely disappeared in an instant. Li Mu suddenly stood up from the dragon. After thinking for a moment, he flew back. Soon, the same feeling appeared again. Li Mu looked down and realized that he was floating in the air above a valley. The valley was overgrown with weeds. At first glance, there was nothing special about it. However, with his attainments in formations, he quickly saw through the mystery. Li Mu's lips moved. He praised, "What a brilliant concealment formation." The person who set up the formation had used the terrain of the valley to set up an almost natural concealment formation. Using the environment to set up the formation, there were no traces of the formation. If he hadn't sensed the 2 demonic corpses, he really wouldn't have discovered this place. Li Mu floated in the air and slowly descended. When he descended to a certain height, the scenery in front of him suddenly changed. The barren valley disappeared and was replaced by a small city. There were many figures moving about in the city. Li Mu looked down from above. He actually saw the shadow of the divine capital in this small city. Perhaps no one would have thought that there would be such a pocket-sized divine capital in the Great Zhou in this nameless valley of the Fey nation. Li Mu sensed the 2 demonic corpses in the city and re-established a connection with his nascent spirit. With a thought, 2 figures flew out of the city and headed straight for Li Mu. However, just as they flew 100 feet out of the city, they suddenly disappeared. When they reappeared, they were inside the city. They flew away again and returned to their original spots. It was as if they had entered a strange cycle. Li Mu wanted to enter the city. However, after descending 100 feet, his body reappeared at its original spot. And at that moment, a strange power of heaven and earth appeared around his body. Li Mu thought for a moment and his body descended again. This time, when the power of heaven and earth appeared again, he directly controlled it and easily landed in the small city. In the small city, countless figures looked at Li Mu strangely. Li Mu could tell that they were all demonic corpses in human form. Although these demonic corpses looked at him with surprise, there was no fear or other emotions. After their attention was temporarily attracted by Li Mu, they began to busy themselves with their own matters. Li Mu walked on the street and was out of place with everything around him. What he felt the most about this place was order. Everything was neat and tidy. Everyone had their own duties. Everywhere was filled with order. Even the divine capital did not give Li Mu such a feeling. In this small world, there was a strange power. Li Mu pursued this power and headed to a building at the end of the small city. This building was similar to a temple. The door was open. Li Mu stood outside and saw a prayer mat inside. A figure sat cross-legged on the prayer mat with his back to him. This figure gave Li Mu an inexplicable sense of familiarity. After Li Mu walked in, the figure stood up from the prayer mat and turned to look at him. "Lord Li, how have you been?" Li Mu said in shock. "It's you." The moment he saw Zhou Zhong, Li Mu was not so surprised about what he had seen in the small city outside. Zhou Zhong was undoubtedly a disciple of legalism. It was said that when a cultivator of legalism advanced from the 6th realm to the 7th realm, they needed to establish a country ruled by law. Although this small city was pocket-sized, it matched the description of legalism in the ancient books. No wonder he had only stayed in the army for a few months before leaving. It turned out that he had secretly come here to break through. Li Mu looked at Zhou Zhong and said meaningfully, "Old Zhou, you've hidden yourself well." Zhou Zhong waved his hand and a jade table and 2 jade chairs appeared in the hall. He indicated for Li Mu to sit down and then asked, "Those 2 Yao corpses are yours?" Li Mu said, "That Bear Yao and Eagle Yao are also my people." "What did you do to them?" Zhou Zhong grabbed at the air and 2 figures appeared in the hall. After the 2 men appeared, they immediately ran behind him and said nervously, "Be careful, Imperial Advisor. This person is very strange." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "Don't worry. We're old friends. Zhou Zhong moved his finger and poured out 2 cups of tea from the jade pot on the table. The fragrance of the tea permeated the air. He took a sip and asked, Lord Li, since when have you become the imperial advisor of the Yao kingdom instead of staying by His Majesty's side? Li Mu said, It seems that you really don't care about the outside world. The Great Zhou and Thousand Fox Kingdom have formed an alliance and are no longer enemies. Zhou Zhong put down his teacup and said, It's not that I haven't heard of it. A few days ago, I heard that a human man became the demon empress of Thousand Fox Kingdom. You must be talking about Lord Li, right? Li Mu waved his hand and said, It's all a rumor. Don't take it seriously. Zhou Zhong glanced at him and did not continue on this topic. He asked, Is Qing'er doing well? Li Mu said, She's doing well in the divine capital. He then asked Zhou Zhong, Lord Zhou, you should be breaking through to the 7th realm soon, right? Zhou Zhong shook his head and said, The upper 3 realms are easier said than done. If you're lucky enough and cultivate for another 30 years, you should have a chance. This sentence seemed to be humble, but it was actually bragging. Zhou Zhong was only 40 years old this year. After 30 years, he would only be 70 years old. A mortal might only be 70 years old, but this was not old for a cultivator. Among the current 7th realm cultivators on the continent, except for the Empress, there was probably no one younger than 70 years old. Moreover, Zhou Zhong's cultivation had been slowly cultivated by himself. He hadn't relied on inheritances or fortuitous encounters. If he reached the 7th level, he would be able to sweep through all the experts in this level. Even if the Lord of Illusions and the Blue Wolf King worked together, they wouldn't be his match. At that time, among the 7th realm cultivators, only the Empress and the sect masters of the various sects would be able to stand up to him. Li Mu thought for a moment and said, Lord Zhou, why don't you return to the Great Zhou and govern the 36 counties and billions of people in the Great Zhou? Isn't that much better than staying in this deep mountain valley? Zhou Zhong said indifferently, With you and His Majesty, the Great Zhou no longer needs me. Li Mu thought for a moment. He was right. The Great Zhou was ruled by law in the first place. Most of the people followed the law. Even if he returned, it would only be icing on the cake. It would not be of much help to his cultivation. A place that could help him in his cultivation would have to fulfill at least 2 conditions. First, a sufficient population. The various cultivation methods in the world all led to the same destination. Whether it was Taoist psychokinesis, Buddhist merit, or the hearts of the people, they all required an extremely large population base. A quantitative change would lead to a qualitative change. It was the same for the school of legalism. How could a small mountain country with only a few hundred demonic beasts compare to the Great Zhou with a population of hundreds of millions? Second, there was no law in this populated place. Or rather, the law had collapsed. Legalism cultivators originally practiced law, drawing power from the process of turning disorder into order. The more chaotic a place was, the more the law collapsed, and the more beneficial it was for their cultivation. For example, during the time of the previous emperor of the Great Zhou, Zhou Zhong's cultivation had probably advanced by leaps and bounds. When everyone thought that he was only at the 5th realm, he had already silently cultivated to the peak of the 6th realm. In general, what he needed to advance was a place with a large enough population and chaotic enough law. Thinking of this, a light suddenly flashed through Mu's mind. He looked at Zhou Zhong and said, I know a place that is more suitable for you than the Great Zhou. The population there is not much less than the Great Zhou. The law there is even more collapsed than the previous emperor's time. It can definitely help you in your cultivation. Chapter 5:13. Before Li Mu could finish, Zhou Zhong asked directly, Are you talking about the Shen Kingdom? Li Mu nodded and said, Yes, it's the Shen Kingdom. Zhou Zhong rubbed the teacup with his fingers and said lightly, The Shen Kingdom is already a mature country. It's not possible for one person to change such a country. Li Mu said, Just tell me what you need. The Great Zhou will try its best to satisfy you. The Thousand Fox country can also help. Zhou Zhong glanced at him and asked, Can you represent the Great Zhou and the Thousand Fox country? Li Mu said, You don't have to worry about that. This is a win-win situation. You can be promoted, and the Great Zhou can be free of the Shen Kingdom's troubles. Why not? The two looked at each other. Silence was better than 1,000 words. 2 hours later, several figures flew out of the valley. Li Mu rode the white dragon, and the 2 demon corpses carried Xianxia and Yingxi. They flew in the direction of the 1,000 Fox country. No one was more suitable than Zhou Zhong to lead the people of the Shen kingdom to freedom and liberation. He needed to be promoted, but it was difficult to do it alone. Li Mu had his own ideas, and he only needed a reliable tool to work for him. The 2 of them hit it off immediately. When Li Mu approached the 1,000 Fox city, a white shadow suddenly flew out of the city. Then, the shadow of a foxtail attacked Li Mu. Li Mu raised his hand and grabbed at the foxtail. A huge palm print appeared in the void and grabbed at the foxtail. When the 2 collided, Li Mu's palm print collapsed. However, the foxtail's momentum did not decrease and continued to attack him. Li Mu formed another seal and summoned a barrier to block the foxtail's attack. However, in the next moment, a white shadow flew up from the 1,000 Fox city and hit Li Mu. Li Mu's body was sent flying. He hurriedly dealt with the attack of the Phantom Princess and said, "Are you crazy?" Phantom Princess did not respond at all. She held 2 short swords in her hands and continued to approach Li Mu. It was only then that Li Mu realized that something was off. Her strength had increased too much since the last time they met. Based on what she was displaying now, she had definitely surpassed the 5th level. When she launched another foxtail attack, Li Mu looked at her but and indeed found 6 foxtails. She had already become a 6-tailed beast. No wonder she attacked him the moment she saw him. She probably wanted to get back at him. Li Mu struggled to deal with her. If he did not use his mystiques and spells and did not use his Dao Bell, he was naturally no match for a 6th realm cultivator. However, he could not use powerful Dao techniques like the demon-slaying protection curse on Phantom Princess. Li Mu's heart moved, and 2 demon corpses appeared in front of Phantom Princess. Li Mu took the opportunity to say, "I already know that you have advanced, it's about time." Phantom Princess did not continue to pester Li Mu. She stopped while she was ahead. She floated in the air and asked Li Mu, "Are you here for me?" To prevent her from making a fuss, Li Mu nodded and said, "I lost contact with the 2 demon corpses not long ago. I was worried that something happened to you, so I came to take a look." Phantom Princess looked at him and said suspiciously, "But Hu Jiu said that you did not let them call me out." Li Mu glanced at Hu Jiu below and explained, "I was worried that it would affect your cultivation. Speaking of which, how did you reach the 6th level so quickly?" Phantom Princess was unconvinced. "So what? Zhou Yi is still at the 7th level. You are not curious about her, but why are you curious about me?" Li Mu just wanted to change the topic and asked casually. She was already at the peak of the 5th level. Now that she was the empress of a country, she could enjoy the psychic power of thousands of demon corpses. She also had the foundation that 1,000 Fox country had accumulated for many years. Growing another tail was just a piece of cake for her. He did not expect that she would drag the empress into everything. Fortunately, the empress was not here. Otherwise, the 2 of them would probably fight again. Li Mu did not reply to her and flew to the square in front of the palace. Phantom Princess also flew down. At this time, Xianxia flew over impatiently. She looked at Phantom Princess and asked Li Mu, "Is this my master for the next 3 years?" Phantom Princess looked at the girl with dragon horns on her head and asked, "What master?" Li Mu's eyelids twitched. He waved his hand at Xianxia and said, "What master? I don't even know what you are talking about. Go play by yourself first. I will call you when we go back." Phantom Princess grabbed Xianxia's wrist and brought her to the side. She asked, "What do you mean by what you said just now?" Li Mu glared at Xianxia and took the initiative to explain, "This dragon has committed a serious crime. I captured her and brought her back to be Her Majesty's mount." Phantom Princess snorted and said bitterly, "You keep saying Your Majesty and giving her everything. Are you as good to your wife as you are to Zhou Yi?" Li Mu looked at her and said, "You heartless fox. You know who I am the best to. This dragon is only at the 5th level. How many things have I given you? 2 7th level, 8 6th level, a page of the heavenly book, and countless pills. Touch your conscience. Do you have a conscience?" Li Mu took the initiative after the attack. Phantom Princess was speechless. He did not stop there. Instead, he took the opportunity to fling his sleeve and said with great disappointment, I gave you everything I have, and you actually said such things. You have disappointed me too much. Xianxia, let's go. After that, he turned into a stream of light and flew straight into the sky. Li Mu had a wishful thinking in his heart. If Phantom Princess did not chase after him, it would be good. He would directly return to the South Commandery. This was his plan from the beginning. In the past, her strength was not as good as his, and Li Mu had taken advantage of her a lot. This time, her cultivation had finally surpassed Li Mu's. With the fox's vengeful personality, he would definitely suffer if he stayed here. However, his wishful thinking fell through in the end. Phantom Princess was faster than him. She stretched out her hands, puffed out her chest, and blocked in front of Li Mu. She whispered, "I was wrong. Don't go." Li Mu looked at her. He did not know whether to leave or not. In the end he flew back. Zhou Zhong still had a few days to take care of the small country. It was fine for him to stay in Thousand Fox Country for a few days, as long as the Empress did not know. As soon as Li Mu returned to the Imperial Palace, the spiritual snail in his storage space began to ring. Perhaps it was because of a premonition. Li Mu made a silent gesture to Phantom Princess. Then, he picked up the spirit snail and said, "Your Majesty." It was very lively on the other side of the spirit snail. Li Mu heard the voices of Zhongling, Xiaobai, and Wan Wan at the same time. The Empress was obviously in the Li residence. In the courtyard of the Li residence, Zhou Yi held the spirit snail and asked, "Didn't you say that the matter in the South Commandery has been resolved and you will be back soon? Why aren't you back yet?" "Ling, Mrs. Yu," Li Mu coughed lightly and said, "Regarding the matter of the Shen Kingdom, I have some ideas. If it succeeds, perhaps the great Zhou will never be disturbed by the Shen Kingdom again." Zhou Yi was silent for a while. Then she said, "Be careful. If you need anything, tell me." Although she, like Ling, hoped that Li Mu would come back soon, she also knew that what he was doing now was beneficial to the country and the people. It was related to the Great Zhou and the gathering of the Emperor's qi in the ancestral temple. It was not the time for her to be willful. Li Mu smiled and said, "Your Majesty, don't worry. After I'm done here, I'll return soon." Cough, cough. Phantom Princess suddenly covered her mouth and coughed a few times. Then, she apologized to Li Mu. "I'm sorry, my throat is a little uncomfortable." Li Mu could clearly feel that the Empress's breathing had become faster. She asked in a deep voice, "Where are you?" Li Mu said honestly, "The Yao Kingdom." Zhou Yi took a deep breath and asked, "The Shen Kingdom is south of the South Commandery. The Yao Kingdom is north of the North Commandery. Are you going to the Yao Kingdom to quell the chaos in the Shen Kingdom?" Li Mu quickly said, "Your Majesty, please listen to my explanation." Zhou Yi said coldly, "Explanation? You should be in the South Commandery, but now you're in the Yao Kingdom. How do you want to explain this? How about I help you make up an excuse? You were originally in the South Commandery. Through the demon corpse you gave to the fox spirit, you sensed that she was in danger. Then, you crossed the entire Great Zhou to see that fox spirit?" Li Mu's lips moved. For a moment, he did not know what to say. Phantom Princess walked to Li Mu's side and said to the spirit conch, "This is the truth. If you don't believe me, there's nothing we can do." Chapter 5:14. When Phantom Princess opened her mouth, Li Mu's hair stood on end. He covered her mouth and said, "Don't talk so much." Illusion Princess's mouth was covered by Li Mu, so she couldn't speak. She could only mutter, The woman's muffled voice entered Zhou Yi's ears. She almost crushed the spirit conch in her hand. She said angrily, "What are you doing?" Lu Hongyan walked over and asked, "Your Majesty, what's wrong?" Zhou Yi handed the spirit conch to her. She gritted her teeth and said, "You have to control your husband." Hearing Lu Hongyan's voice coming from the spirit snail, Li Mu's heart was half at ease. In the past, she was unruly, arrogant, and willful, but after marrying him, she slowly began to be reasonable. Li Mu explained the situation to her. After a while, Lu Hongyan put down the spirit conch and said to the Empress, "Your Majesty, you've misunderstood him. There's nothing between him and the Empress of Thousand Fox Country. It's all a misunderstanding." Zhou Yi took back the spirit conch and turned her head. "What misunderstanding?" As long as he doesn't betray the great Zhou, he can be with whoever he wants. If you don't care, why should I care? Lu Hanyan smiled and said, no matter what, she's still the empress of a country. As long as she's sincere about her husband, I don't care. It's just another sister in the family. Zhou Yi looked at Lu Hanyan. She felt that there was a hidden meaning in her words. In Thousand Fox Country, Illusion Princess's voice had recovered. She looked at Li Mu in shock and asked, Zhou Yi and your wife are together? Li Mu glanced at her and said, didn't you hear it? Illusion Princess said in disbelief. Why are they together? Won't they fight? Li Mu said, no, not only won't they fight, they're as close as sisters. You don't have to worry. Illusion Princess gritted her teeth and said, worry my ass. She had never expected that Zhou Qiong would get together with Li Mu's wife after she left Luoyang. This made her jealous, and hateful. All kinds of emotions mixed together. She returned to her palace. Hulu looked at her and said, Your Majesty, the heavenly monarch wants you to see him. Illusion Princess left the palace and went to the highest cave residence in Thousand Fox Country. She said listlessly, Father, what's the matter? The myriad illusion lord sat cross-legged on a stone platform and said, Li Mu is here? Illusion Princess said, Didn't you already know? The 10,000 illusions god monarch pondered for a moment, then looked at her and asked, What exactly are you planning? Princess asked. Heavenly what? Heavenly monarch of myriad illusions said, It's about your relationship with Li Mu. Huan Ji sighed and said, What can I do? The Celestial Fox clan always pays their debts. He saved me, you, and my brother time and time again. He made me the queen of Thousand Fox Kingdom and helped us deal with the Celestial Wolf clan. He even gave me so many experts. I can only repay such a great debt by marrying him. Heavenly Monarch of Myriad Illusion reached out and a pink pill appeared in his hand. Illusion Princess looked at the pill and asked, What's this? Heavenly Monarch of Myriad Illusion said, Let him take this pill. No matter how strong his mind is, he will fall into the temptation of lust. Huan Ji didn't even look at the pill. She coldly snorted and said, As a fox spirit, using this kind of thing is a disgrace. I will make him like me willingly and not use such low methods. Then she turned and walked out of the cave residence. Heavenly Monarch of Myriad Illusion was about to put away the pill, but it flew out of the cave residence. The pink pill floated in Illusion Princess's hand and said, Just in case. In the Imperial Palace of Thousand Fox Country, Li Mu looked at Hulu who was making a bed for him and said, Go do your thing. I'll do it myself. The main thing was that she was kneeling on the bed with her buttocks sticking out and twisting around. Who could stand it? Even though Li Mu didn't have any other thoughts about her, he didn't want to see such a scene before going to bed at night. Hulu continued to kneel on the bed and said, This is what Lord Illusion Princess told me. Just wait a little longer. She said while making the bed, This used to be the Queen's palace. No one has lived here for a long time. Lord Illusion Princess said this place has the most space and has been keeping it for you. After Hulu finished making the bed, she left the room. Li Mu lay comfortably on the big, soft bed. All his fatigue had been relieved. After an unknown amount of time, the spirit snail in the storage space vibrated again. Li Mu picked it up and immediately said, Your Majesty, listen to this subject. In the spirit snail, Zhou said indifferently, I know. Li Mu let out a sigh of relief and said, This subject met Zhou Zhong here. Leave the matter of Shen country to him. Your Majesty can rest assured. The Empress didn't seem to be interested in this matter at all. She reminded Li Mu, Be careful of that fox in Yao country. Don't do anything to let Han Yen down. After he left, it seemed that the relationship between the Empress and Lu Han Yen was developing quickly. Li Mu was relieved and said, Your Majesty, don't worry. This subject knows what to do. Before he finished speaking, the door was suddenly pushed open. Li Mu saw Illusion Princess walk in and immediately pulled up the blanket. He asked vigilantly, What are you doing? Illusion Princess glanced at him and said, Why are you so afraid? Do you think I will eat you? Li Mu sat up from the bed and revealed his naked upper body. He said in disdain, Why would a man like me be afraid of this? You should be the one who is afraid of me eating you. Illusion Princess snorted coldly, Then eat me. Li Mu realized that she couldn't be treated like a normal girl. He took off his pajamas and covered his body. He asked, "Why are you here so late?" It seemed like there were only 2 people in the room, but there were actually 3 of them. Ling Kong was still under his blanket, and Phantom Princess had come to his room in the middle of the night. If Li Mu hung up now, the Empress would probably think about it for the whole night. Anyways, he was not afraid of anything. This showed that he was magnanimous. Illusion Princess sat beside the bed and asked, "When are you leaving this time?" Li Mu said, 3 days at least, 5 days at most. Illusion Princess frowned and said, "So soon?" Li Mu said, "I just came to see if there's anything here. Since there's nothing, I should leave. There are still important things to deal with in the South region. I can't stay for too long." For Zhou again? Not all. In the past, Li Mu worked for the Empress. Now he worked for himself. However, there was no need to explain to Illusion Princess about the Emperor's aura. However, he didn't say anything. The atmosphere in the hall became awkward again. The awkwardness between 2 people was okay. However, the awkwardness between 3 people was even worse. Li Mu hoped that Illusion Princess would leave quickly. However, Illusion Princess didn't have any intention of leaving. She asked, "How did you meet your wife?" Li Mu asked, "Which one are you talking about?" Illusion Princess said, "2. Li Mu said, "It's a long story." Illusion Princess thought for a while and said, "Then tell me how you fell in love with them." This was not a secret. Li Mu said, "When I was still a small constable, Qingqing was my superior. We were together every day. We caught ghosts together and subdued demons together. Then we fell in love with each other." Illusion Princess remembered this in her heart and asked, "What about Lu Hongyan?" Li Mu said, "At that time, we were neighbors. Neighbors walked with each other every day. It's normal for us to fall in love with each other, right?" It would have been better if Illusion Princess didn't mention it. When she mentioned this topic, Li Mu recalled the process of meeting the 2 women in Xianxia County. Although there were many twists and turns, fortunately, the heavens were good to him. After going around in circles, they returned to Li Mu's side. Illusion Princess continued to ask, "Then when did you fall in love with Zhou Yi?" Li Mu was still immersed in his memories. He murmured, "There's no specific time to fall in love with someone. Maybe it was when we were in Chang'e Palace." After a long time, Li Mu was halfway through his words when he suddenly realized something. He immediately shut his mouth. Illusion Princess looked at him and was shocked. "You really like Zhou Yi?" Li Mu strode to the bed. He didn't know when the Empress had hung up the spiritual conch. He let out a long sigh of relief. In Chang'e Palace, Zhou Yi, who had already fallen asleep, walked down the bed and walked back and forth in the bedroom. Her hands tightly held the corner of her nightgown. A trace of red cloud quickly appeared on her face. Chapter 5:15. In the middle of the night, Illusion Princess returned to her palace unhappily and summoned Hu Lu. She said gloomily, "Li Mu really likes Zhou Yi. If Zhou Yi had taken the initiative, he would have become the Empress of the Great Zhou. I don't understand. We're both Empresses. How am I not as good as Zhou Yi? Is she prettier than me? Does she have a better figure than me?" Hu Lu shook her head and said, "Her Majesty and the Empress of the Great Zhou are both first-class beauties in the world. In terms of appearance and figure, you can only say that each has her own merits. It's impossible to tell who's better." Then she changed the topic and continued, "However, the Great Zhou is vast and far beyond our 1,000-fox nation. Her Majesty can only compete with the Empress of the Great Zhou in terms of status if she unifies the entire demon nation. In addition, the Empress of the Great Zhou is also at the top of the world. She's 1 realm higher than Her Majesty. Also, Li Mu is at a disadvantage compared to the Empress of the Great Zhou. She has saved Li Mu many times, but we need Li Mu to save us. This is also why you can't compare to her." "Stop talking." Illusion Princess waved her hand and interrupted Hu Lu. She called Hu Lu over to comfort her. However, after listening to Hu Lu's words, she felt even worse. After sending Hu Lu away, she lay on the bed and muttered, "Love grows with time." The next morning, just as Li Mu woke up, 2 beautiful little fox demons walked in with a tray. The breakfast of the 1,000-fox nation looked very sumptuous. Li Mu couldn't finish it all by himself. He wanted to ask them to take away a few dishes, but when Illusion Princess walked in and sat at the table, he realized that it was a meal for two. Illusion Princess didn't seem to be here to eat breakfast with Li Mu. She talked a lot with Li Mu about the current problems of the Thousand Fox Nation and the future direction of development. From this, it could be seen that Phantom Princess was different from Empress. She was also the ruler of a country, but she was clearly more competent. Huan Ji bit her chopsticks and said, "Our spies in the Sky Wolf tribe have sent back news that the Sage Sect Elder has already left the Demon Kingdom. Do you think we should take this opportunity to attack the Sky Wolf Kingdom and take over the Sky Wolf Kingdom?" Li Mu took a sip of the fruit drink and shook his head. "It's not time yet. A starving camel is still bigger than a horse. With the current strength of the Thousand Fox Kingdom, it won't be easy to completely capture the Celestial Wolf Kingdom. Not to mention, the Black Snake and Flying Bear tribes are at their peak strength." "Oh." Huan Ji let out an "oh," and dispelled this thought. After a while she said, "Then teach me Fu Lu and the way of formations. I want to learn." Since he had nothing to do, Li Mu wasn't stingy with these things. In the next 2 days, he taught her talisman formations when he had time. He was originally worried that Huan Ji had other motives and was plotting something, but it turned out that Li Mu was overthinking things. He didn't know when she became interested in Fu Lu and formations. She actually studied seriously and pestered Li Mu to teach her from morning till night. It was just that her talent was a little lacking. It was fine to draw low-level Fu Lu, but the failure rate of high-level Fu Lu was very high. With her cultivation, this shouldn't have happened. Thus, Li Mu could teach her over and over again without getting tired of it. In some ways, she was exactly the same as Ting Xian. She looked smart and quick-witted, but when it came to learning such profound knowledge, her nature as a poor student was exposed. She was a little stupid, but in the past few days, Li Mu also gained a lot from her. The main thing was the ability to resist charm. When Xiao Bai had 5 tails, the charm in her gestures was sometimes something that Li Mu couldn't resist even without the clear heart art. Huan Ji, a 6-tailed fox, had to change into 3 different sets of beautiful clothes every day. The later it was, the less she wore. Without self-control, he really didn't dare to let her stay by his side. Late at night, in Huan Ji's bedroom, she stood barefoot on the ground and admired her graceful body in the mirror. After a while, she walked to the table and sat down. She held her chin with one hand and muttered, "How long is a day? Is 10 days enough?" Li Mu and Zhou Zhong had agreed that he would come to Thousand Fox Country to find him after he solved the matter of the small demon country. It wasn't until the 5th day when he was teaching Huan Ji a new Fu Lu that Hu Jiu came to report that a human was looking for him outside. Li Mu and Huan Ji walked to the square in front of the palace. Zhou Zhong wore a long robe and stood there. He said to Li Mu, "Let's go." Huan Ji looked at Zhou Zhong with sullen eyes. Her plan of making love had just started and was forced to stop. She didn't know when she would have such an opportunity again. Li Mu turned to Huan Ji and said, "We're leaving." Huan Ji waved her hand. "Let's go, let's go." It wasn't until the 3 figures disappeared into the horizon that she retracted her gaze and fell into deep thought again. After a while, Huan Ji suddenly looked at Hu Lu and said, "Tell them to speed up the incorporation of the various demon races." Hu Lu hesitated and said, "But Your Majesty, our territory has already expanded greatly. If we continue, we will clash with the territories of the other 3 races," Huan Ji said. "How is this considered large? It's even worse than the Great Zhou. Zhou Yi can control half of the Zhu continent, why can't I control the entire demon country?" Xin Nation, Northern State. After leaving Qianhu Nation, Li Mu and Zhou Zhong went directly to Xin Nation's northern state. Great Zhou had 36 counties, and Xin Nation had more than 20 states. Their states were on the same level as Great Zhou's counties, but they were different. The Great Zhou court firmly controlled the 36 counties, but Xin Nation states were very independent. Every state was highly autonomous. Other than contributing a portion of taxes to the central government every year, the central government's control over the other states was very weak. Even the people's faith was firmly controlled by the religious sects that controlled the various states. The royal family of Xin Nation couldn't even get a share. This was also the reason why Xin Nation's population was similar to Great Zhou's, but the royal family couldn't produce a 7th realm cultivator. All of Xin Nation's faith was divided among countless religious sects in the various states. Not only could they not get much from the various states, but the central government also had to give these religious sects all sorts of benefits every year in exchange for them to manage the various states, suppress rebellions, and prevent this huge country from collapsing. The reason why this country was able to survive until now and not fall apart was because of these religious sects that had different names but were of the same origin. They were all branches of the ancient Shen sect. Their names were different, but their teachings were similar. They all divided people into 3, 6, and 9 classes. The upper-class people were served for generations, while the descendants of the lower-class people could only serve the upper-class people. Li Mu had already investigated thoroughly. The one in control of the Xin Nation's northern state was a sect called the Vajra sect. This sect had countless followers in the northern state. The Vajra sect's leader had attained the 6th realm under the support of the northern state citizens' psychokinesis for decades. Xin Nation's northern state bordered Great Zhou's southern state, so Li Mu chose this place as his target. If he wanted to implement reforms in northern state, the biggest obstacle would be the Vajra sect. He had to solve this problem first. When the 3 of them flew towards the Vajra sect's Mount Vajra, Li Mu felt that this place was slightly familiar. After carefully identifying it, he remembered that he and Xianxia had been here not long ago. It was here that they took back In Xin's inner core from the bald man. As Li Mu and the other 2 approached, a figure flew out from the temple on the short mountain. The bald man looked at Li Mu and Xianxia in horror and said angrily, "Didn't I return the inner core to you? Why are you here again?" Li Mu was stunned. He looked at him and asked, "You're the leader of the Vajra sect?" The bald man said in a deep voice, "Why are you looking for me?" Li Mu looked at him and said, "I'm sorry for taking your things last time. This time, I'm here to give you something." The bald man was stunned. He asked, "What is it?" Li Mu waved his hand and threw a small bell at him. The small bell quickly covered the sky and covered the bald man, Li Mu, and Zhou Zhong. Chapter 5:16. On the mountain path leading to the glorious temple, countless believers saw the giant bell in the sky. "What's that?" "The god has appeared. The god has received the sect master." After a brief moment of shock, their expressions immediately became fanatical. They knelt on the stone steps of the mountain path and kowtowed continuously. After the first glance, no one raised their heads again. Ordinary believers could not look directly at the god. This was one of their teachings. Only the sect master could come into close contact with the god. It was precisely because they did not raise their heads that they did not see the situation inside the bell. Within the Tao Bell, the supreme leader in the hearts of the northern barbarian believers was being beaten up by 2 figures. He was no match for either of them and wanted to escape. However, even after using all of his magic power, he still couldn't break through the bell. Instead, he knocked himself into a daze. A few more spells landed on his body, and his clothes were tattered. The bald man's face was filled with grief and anger, and his voice was filled with resentment. "What are you doing? What are you doing? I've given you the inner core and the treasure map of the secret realm, but you still won't let me go. What do you want?" Li Mu looked at him and said, "I want you to leave the northern bang." The bald man shouted, "Why didn't you say so earlier? Leave the northern bang if you want. What are you doing?" Li Mu was stunned for a moment before asking, "You're willing to leave the northern bang?" The bald man said with grief and indignation, "You didn't even ask me. How do you know I'm not willing?" He felt extremely bitter in his heart. The northern bang was his foundation. Of course, he was unwilling to leave. However, seeing how ruthless these 2 people were, if he did not agree, he would probably die here today. He had cultivated hard for 100 years to reach his current cultivation level. Did he not know which to choose between leaving the northern bang or dying in the northern bang? At this moment, Zhou Zhong, who was beside Li Mu, said, "This person's psychokinesis is extremely strong. He must have a great influence here. Instead of chasing him away, why not keep him and provide us with help?" Li Mu glanced at the bald man and said, "This person is too strong. If we keep him, we have to be wary of him. Why don't we just kill him?" The bald man's eyelids twitched violently. He immediately spoke in standard Great Zhou Mandarin. "There are believers of my sect in the entire northern state. No matter what you do, I can help you." Li Mu said indifferently, I want you to abolish the hierarchy of the northern state. From now on, there will be no distinction between nobles and peasants. Standardize the legislation of the northern state. Before the law, everyone will be treated equally. The bald man's expression changed greatly, and he immediately said, That's impossible. Li Mu looked at Zhou Zhong and said, Like I said, it's better to kill him. The bald man continued, If that's impossible, then what is possible? Actually, I've long wanted to enact a new law in the northern state to abolish the status of the untouchables. It's not that we can't discuss it. It's not a big deal, we can go down and talk about it slowly. When the believers on the mountain path raised their heads again, the vision above their heads had disappeared. Their expressions were even more respectful as they walked towards the top of the mountain. In the temple at the top of the mountain, in a magnificent hall, the bald man offered a drop of his soul blood. The light in his eyes had completely dimmed. Offering his soul blood meant that his life no longer belonged to him. It wasn't that he hadn't thought of resisting, but the strength of these two people had already made him suffer twice. That young man was constantly thinking of getting rid of him. Only by obeying them would he have a chance of survival. In fact, after Zhou Zhong spoke, Li Mu had the idea of subduing the bald man. If he got rid of him or chased him out of the northern state, all of his and Zhou Zhong's actions here would be 100 times more difficult. After all, as two people from Zhou country, it would be hell to do such a thing in the Xin nation. After subduing the bald man, things would become much easier. The various states of the Shen nation were autonomous villages. The matters of a village could be handled by the village. If the village couldn't handle it, they would report it to the temple. With the number of believers of the Vajra sect and their influence in the northern state, it would provide them with a lot of help. Li Mu looked at his shiny head and asked, What's your name? The bald man said listlessly, Jianghu. How old are you this year? 92. Li Mu didn't expect the bald man to be close to 100 years old. If that was the case, he and Zhou Zhong were the two young people who didn't care about martial ethics and teamed up to bully a centenarian like him. But from another perspective, although they were from the Great Zhou, they were now representing the oppressed people of the Xin nation and the northern state. This was the spirit of internationalism. It didn't matter whether they cared about martial ethics or not. Jianghu was a noble of the Xin nation. He had shown good talent for cultivation since he was young. Later, his cultivation broke through to the fifth realm and he established the Vajra sect in the northern state. He recruited believers bit by bit and absorbed their power of will. When he was 80 years old, he successfully reached the sixth realm. No wonder he was unwilling to change the hierarchy of the people of the northern state. This was a concept engraved in his bones as an upper-class person for thousands of years. Of course, no concept or persistence was more important than his life. In the end, he still gave in to Li Mu and Zhou Zhong. The first thing he did under the instructions of Li Mu and Zhou Zhong was to abolish the hierarchy of the people of the northern state. As for the reason for doing so, it couldn't be more simple. As the leader of the Vajra sect and the spokesperson of the god that many people of the northern state believed in, he could push everything to the god. This was not his own decision, but an oracle. Many believers saw the vision of heaven and earth and believed it without a doubt. When the lower-class people and pariahs heard this, they naturally cheered. The nobles of the northern state immediately objected with all their might. They were born as upper-class people and had hereditary land. They could enjoy the services of the lower-class people and pariahs. Now, how could they be willing to deprive them, their descendants, and their descendants of this right? For this, they were even willing to violate the dignity of the sect. However, their resistance seemed so powerless in the face of the absolute power of the Vajra sect. The first thing they lost was their noble status, followed by their land. All the land in the northern state was taken back and distributed to the people of the northern state according to the number of people. These lands did not belong to anyone, but the people could farm on them. Everything that was harvested from the land belonged to the people. This major move won the support of all the pariahs of the northern state. In the past they did not have any land. All the land belonged to the nobles. They worked for the nobles but could not even exchange food and clothing. This was the first time they had their own land. This meant that they could easily feed a family. After this, the northern state quickly promulgated new laws. The elders in the village no longer had the power to privately punish the villagers. The northern state would redivide the areas and set up government offices. The new laws applied to all the people of the northern state, regardless of whether they were commoners or nobles. Under the new laws, everyone was treated equally. Some people rejoiced, while others were shocked, angry, and sorrowful. How dare Xianxia treat us like this? Did he forget that he is just like us? In a certain luxurious residence, the nobles of the northern state gathered together. Everyone was filled with righteous indignation. An old man wearing a luxurious robe and holding a golden scepter fiercely slammed his scepter on the ground and shouted, "Spectre, a terrifying spectre is wandering in the northern state. We can't let it continue to wreak havoc. Immediately report to the new capital." Chapter 5:17. After communicating with the Empress, she asked Li Mu when he would return as usual. Li Mu also wanted to reunite with his family, but the current situation did not allow it. The northern state had just started. The reason why they could achieve so much in such a short time was because they controlled the Vajra sect. It was much easier to force reforms from the top down than from the bottom up. The real difficulty was yet to come. The Xin nation aristocrats in the northern state were strong opponents of the new law. The village elders and other leaders were also unwilling to give up their power. It was difficult for the grassroots to cooperate. Although they did not have much power, they still had the real rulers of the Xin nation behind them. Once they heard the news and reacted, they would definitely send powerhouses to suppress the northern state. He did not expect that the Vajra sect's leader, a sixth realm powerhouse, would be so obedient. Xianggu's Vajra sect had done a great job this time. Li Mu had to make some preparations in advance. He summoned Xianggu and asked directly, "How many seventh realms do you have in the Xin nation?" Xianggu glanced at Li Mu and said, "Nirvana sect, Suffering sect, and Yen sect each have a wisdom realm powerhouse." Ancient Xin nation was the origin of Buddhism. Although ancient Buddhism had disappeared, it still evolved into a few branches. Among them, the Heart sect was a product of Buddhism that spread to the Great Zhou hundreds of years ago. It had nothing to do with the Xin nation's Buddhism. Nirvana sect, Suffering sect, and Yen sect were all in the Xin nation. The Xin nation was the foundation of their believers. Once these three sects interfered, Zhou alone would not be able to resist three seventh realms. Li Mu still had to make a trip to the Yao nation. The Lord of Illusions had been recuperating for so long. Even if he could not recover to his peak, he had already returned to the seventh realm. The Green Wolf King was no longer a threat. Phantom Princess left a seventh realm demon corpse with her. With the Lord of Illusions, it was enough to protect the Thousand Fox Nation. With the northern states Zhou and himself, even if the Xin nation's royal family invited the powerhouses of the three sects, it would be useless. When he returned to the Yao nation this time, Phantom Princess was already in seclusion. Li Mu did not let Hu Lu disturb her. He quietly took a seventh realm demon corpse and returned to the northern state. Li Mu controlled the airship to fly high in the sky. At a certain moment, he suddenly looked down. Below the clouds on the ground, a figure was frantically fleeing. Several white-robed men chased after him. The leader of the group held a magic staff and said angrily, "You lowly commoner, how dare you offend your superiors? After I catch you, I'll let you suffer 108 punishments before you die." Iagu flew at full speed. His spiritual power was almost exhausted. He wanted to live a good life with Alicia, but when he and Alicia went to the market to buy groceries, Alicia caught the eye of an aristocrat. After a conflict with the aristocrat, he seriously injured the aristocrat's entourage, angering the family behind the aristocrat, and was chased by several priests of the family. Under the teachings of his benefactor, Aragu had already started cultivating. However, he did not know many spells and was no match for these people. He could only flee helplessly. He hadn't been cultivating for long, so his flying speed was far slower than the flying carpets under their feet. Soon, they caught up with him. Bang! A magic staff hit Araga's back hard. He spat out a mouthful of blood and could no longer summon any spiritual power. 5 white-robed men jumped down from the flying carpets and walked toward him step by step. They mocked, "Lowly commoner, run, keep running." Alicia had already settled Alicia. Now that he had settled Alicia down, Araga no longer had any worries. He clutched his chest and leaned against a tree with difficulty. Looking at the people walking toward him, there was no fear on his face. Instead, there was a trace of mockery. He said lightly, Laugh, laugh. You won't be able to laugh for long. The lowly commoners you speak of will soon take away your land and your self-righteous honor of being superior. The lowly commoners you oppressed will eventually dominate this country. The white-robed man with the magic staff had a gloomy expression. He said coldly, "These traitorous lowly commoners will eventually be suppressed, but you won't live to see that day." With that, the magic staff in his hand emitted a blinding light and went straight for Araga's head. The magic staff flew out halfway and stopped in the air. After the 5 white-robed men's minds buzzed, the spiritual power in their bodies drained rapidly. The next moment, they blacked out and fell to the ground. Araga was already prepared for death. This sudden change made him confused. Until a figure slowly descended from the sky, Araga was stunned for a moment. Then, excitement appeared on his face. He said in surprise, "Benefactor." Li Mu looked at him and smiled. "Seems like we are really fated." When Li Mu returned to the Vajra sect, there were 2 more people beside him. They were Aragu and his wife, Alicia. Araga's identity was a true lowly commoner. He could represent the oppressed lowly commoners of the northern state. The commoners of the northern state needed such a leader. It was important to have a good reason. After all, Xianghu and his Vajra sect members were the most superior beings in the Xin nation. It was difficult for them to gain the trust of the lowly commoners. A lowly commoner like Aragu was the best candidate to represent them. Although he was still very weak now, Li Mu had his eyes on his future. With a natural spiritual body, as long as he did not slack off in his cultivation, it would be easy for him to advance to the 6th realm in the future. When Li Mu suggested that he should lead the commoners of the northern state, Aragu agreed without hesitation. In the Vajra sect, Xianghu had not seen Li Mu for 2 days. He thought that he had left the Xin nation and was secretly happy. This young man was ruthless and merciless. He almost died in his hands. Seeing him here again, Xianghu felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. The fire that had just been ignited in his heart was extinguished. He originally thought that the central state would not sit by and do nothing with such a huge change happening in the northern state. The new capital would very likely invite the strongest cultivators of the 3 sects to suppress the rebellion. Then, he would be able to regain his freedom after being coerced. However, when he saw the tall figure standing behind the young man, his heart sank completely. The silent figure standing behind the young man had a lifeless aura, and he could not see through him at all. He now suspected that the young man was a 7th realm cultivator. If he was, then the northern state would be completely out of the central state's control from now on. There were only 3 7th realm cultivators in the entire Xin nation. If the northern state had a 7th realm cultivator, they would immediately be on equal footing with the 3 sections. Even the 3 sects would not easily offend them. He looked at Li Mu tentatively and asked, "Sir, this is..." Li Mu looked at him indifferently and said, "Don't ask what you shouldn't ask." Xianghu immediately shut his mouth. However, he was almost certain that this young man was undoubtedly a 7th realm cultivator. His future days would be even more bleak. Just as this thought appeared in his mind, he suddenly turned to look into the distance. At the end of the southern horizon, a powerful aura appeared. A bald man wearing a tattered kasaya broke through the air. The man's kasaya was full of holes, and he was barefoot. He did not even have shoes. However, the aura on his body was at the 6th realm. The man rapidly approached the temple, and his voice rolled over. "Xianghu, come out and see me." There were not many cultivators in the Xin nation, and they were all familiar with each other. Xianghu had already recognized the newcomer. He was Elder Fan Tian of the Ku sect. 20 years ago, he had already stepped into the 6th realm. He was about to bite the bullet and fly up, but another figure was faster than him. The tall man whose cultivation Xianghu could not see through disappeared instantly. When he reappeared, he was already high up in the sky, flying towards Elder Fan Tian. Elder Fan Tian snorted coldly and waved his palm forward. His palm rapidly enlarged and pressed down on the tall man. Xianghu's throat moved, and he secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Elder Fan Tian was the 3rd most powerful cultivator in the Ku sect. His attack was a Buddhist abhijna. This palm seemed ordinary, but it contained a part of the world. It was suppressed by the power of the world, and it could not be broken by anyone below the 7th realm. Even if he faced this palm, he would have to retreat. Faced with this palm, the tall figure did not dodge or retreat. Instead, he crashed into it. There was a deafening sound, accompanied by violent mana fluctuations. The giant palm collapsed immediately. The figure did not slow down and crashed into Elder Fan Tion's body. A golden light erupted from Elder Fan Tion's body. That was his indestructible Buddhist Dhamma body. Even so, he was still knocked back 100 feet. Blood spurted from his mouth. The figure's sharp nails pierced into his body, sealing his mana instantly. Then, the demon corpse carried Elder Fan Tion by the neck and flew to Li Mu. It casually threw him on the ground. Sanggu's throat moved again. Without hesitation, he kicked Elder Fan Tion's body and shouted, "Speak, who sent you here? What are you doing here?" Chapter 5:18. Elder Fan Tion's cultivation was sealed. He looked at the tall figure with fear in his eyes. The seventh realm. The North actually had a seventh realm cultivator. After the Central State received the news of the North's rebellion, they immediately asked for help from the Ku sect. He came here under the orders of the supremacy to suppress Xianghu. He thought that it would be a piece of cake, but he was captured in the blink of an eye. The person who attacked him just now must be in the seventh realm. In this case, even the Ku sect would not be able to interfere. After all, they only had one venerable one in the seventh realm. Provoking such a powerhouse would bring disaster to the sect. Elder Fan Tion did not even think and immediately said, "I'm only here under the orders of the supremacy to investigate the North's rebellion. I didn't mean to offend you. Please forgive me." In Buddhism, the term supremacy was used to refer to a 7th-grade Prajna realm cultivator. The Xin nation was not like the Great Zhou, and Buddhism was not like Taoism. After Yuzenzi advanced 2 years ago, there were 4 7th realm cultivators in Fulu school alone. In the entire Xin nation, only the 3 Buddhist sects had 1 7th realm cultivator each. Therefore, the appearance of a 7th realm cultivator in the Xin nation was enough to change the entire situation. This was also the reason why Li Mu brought the demon corpse here. His existence could make the 3 top cultivators in the Xin nation not dare to act rashly. Before Li Mu could speak, Sanggu asked, "Sir, he's the 3rd strongest cultivator in the Ku sect. His name is Fan Tion. How should we deal with him?" After the demon corpse revealed its strength, Sanggu was obviously more perceptive. Li Mu looked at him and said, "Let him go." Sanggu was stunned and asked, "What?" Li Mu waved his hand and said, "Since he didn't mean to offend you, give him a chance. Go back and tell your supremacy to stop interfering in the North's affairs. Otherwise, we will personally visit your supremacy and talk to him." He let the demon corpse remove the restriction of Brahma's mana. Brahma climbed up from the ground. He already knew who was in charge here. He respectfully gave Li Mu a Buddhist salute and said, "Junior will take his leave." Seeing Brahma leave, Sanggu asked in confusion, "My lord, he is an important figure of the bitter sect. Why did you let him go?" He knew very well that after this 7th realm powerhouse appeared, the Central State would no longer be able to do anything to the Northern State. For a very long time to come, his fate would be tied to these people. Under such circumstances, he had to start making plans for himself. Li Mu looked at Sanggu in surprise. These days, when he was asked to do things, he was always unwilling. This time, he actually took the initiative to think for them. He then explained, "The Xin nation's problem is in the bones, not the skin. To change the Northern State, it will take at least a few decades. We have no enmity with the bitter sect, so we don't have to become enemies with them." To be honest, Li Mu did not have a good impression of the Xin nation and had no intention of changing it. His great ambition was to bring peace to the Great Zhou, not the Xin nation. However, the Xin nation and the Northern State shared a border with the Great Zhou. The stability of the Northern State and the Southern State of the Great Zhou were the most important. He had already asked Sanggu to announce to the public that the Northern State would be independent from now on. From now on, the Xin nation and the Northern State would become independent countries. The Xin nation and the Great Zhou would no longer share a direct border. The soldiers of the Southern Army could also live a peaceful and stable life. Since Li Mu had already spoken, Sanggu could not say anything else. He inadvertently glanced behind Li Mu, and realized that a young man behind him was looking at Li Mu with an extremely respectful gaze. From his clothes and skin color, He should be a lowly citizen of the Shin nation. Sanga's gaze moved away from him and quickly returned back. He was shocked. He stepped in front of Aragu and grabbed his wrist. He muttered, "Such a physique, such a physique." Aragu was shocked. At this moment, Sangu spoke urgently. "I am Sangu. Are you willing to acknowledge me as your master?" Everyone in the northern state knew of Sangu's name. He was the belief of the Vajra sect. However, Aragu, whose thoughts had changed, did not respect him. Instead, he was somewhat repulsed. He knelt in front of Li Mu and said, "I want to acknowledge you as my master." Li Mu did not even think about it. He waved his hand and said, "I don't accept disciples. If you are willing, you can acknowledge Sangu as your master. He is more than capable of teaching you." His benefactor was already a godlike existence in his heart. Although he could not acknowledge him as his master, which disappointed Aragu, he did not dare to ask to become his benefactor's disciple. He knelt in front of Sangu and said, "Greetings, master." Everything he had experienced made him understand that he had to have enough strength to protect himself and his loved ones. Only then could he do what he wanted to do. Sangu looked at Li Mu gratefully. Li Mu turned and walked out of the hall. Sangu did not have much lifespan left. To them, no matter how powerful they were when they were alive, it was inevitable that they would return to dust after their lifespan was exhausted. When there was no hope of breaking through in their later years, many people's greatest wish was to find a disciple to pass on their lifelong knowledge. With Araga's physique, even a 7th-level cultivator would not be able to resist snatching him, let alone a 6th-level cultivator. It was good to have a cultivator like Sangu teach him. It would save him a lot of detours on the path of cultivation. Zhou Zhong walked over from afar and said, "I'm not used to the Vajra sect's people. When you return to Shendu, transfer Wei Pang over." Li Mu nodded and said, "There's no need to return to Shendu. I can do it now." He took out the spirit snail. After dialing, a sweet voice came from the spirit snail. "Daddy, when are you coming back?" "Linga misses you." Li Mu smiled and said, "Linga, be good. I'll be back soon. Give the spirit snail to your mother. I have something to tell her." Hearing the sound coming from the other side of the spirit snail, Li Mu said, "Your Majesty, when you're free, give a decree to send Wei Pang, the head of the Ministry of Justice, to Shen country's northern state." After talking to the Empress and chatting for a while, Li Mu put away the spirit snail. However, he noticed that Zhou Zhong was looking at him strangely. Li Mu asked, "What are you looking at?" Zhou Zhong shook his head and said, "Nothing, Your Majesty." Shen country, central state. On a flattened mountaintop, there was a group of magnificent temples that occupied a large area. On the top floor of the tallest pagoda in the group of temples, Brahma put his hands together and said, "Venerable One, this is what happened. If it wasn't for the mercy of that senior, I would have passed away." An old monk sitting cross-legged on a lotus throne with his eyebrows hanging down to his chest slowly opened his eyes and said, "Our foundation isn't in Northern State. Since that's the case, we don't have to care about Northern State anymore." The Ku sect only had one Venerable One and couldn't afford to offend a 7th realm cultivator. There was no need to offend a 7th realm cultivator for the imperial court. Brahma asked, "If that's the case, how do we explain it to the imperial court?" The old monk said, "Tell them the truth." Brahma bowed and said, "As you wish." Shen country, central state, new capital. In the palace hall, the young emperor of Shen country gathered the important officials to discuss the rebellion in northern state. "Your Majesty, don't worry. Elder Brahma has already gone to northern state. I believe the rebellion will be quelled soon. Although I don't know what's wrong with Sangu, he's definitely no match for Elder Brahma. With Elder Fantion here, nothing will happen." While everyone was discussing enthusiastically, an official stumbled in from outside and shouted, "Your Majesty, it's bad. Northern State has sent an urgent message. Northern State has declared independence." Preposterous! The Emperor of Shen country was furious. He pulled out the sword that symbolized power from his waist and pointed to the north. He said, "Send troops, we must send troops. Gather the defense forces and send troops to Northern State immediately." An official advised, "Your Majesty, please calm down. Elder Brahma hasn't returned yet." Perhaps the rebellion in Northern State has been quelled. As soon as he said that, Another official hurriedly ran in from outside and said while panting, "Your Majesty, news from the Ku sect. Elder Brahma has returned. The Venerable One has passed down a decree that the Ku sect will no longer interfere in northern states' affairs." An official asked in shock, "Why? Could it be that even Elder Brahma can't quell the rebellion?" "Even if Elder Brahma can't, the Venerable One doesn't have to give such a decree." The Emperor of Shen country was even angrier. He clenched the sword in his hand and said in a deep voice, "Send troops," the official hurriedly said. "Your Majesty, you can't. Elder Brahma said that there's a seventh realm powerhouse behind Jianghu. Even the Ku sect doesn't want to provoke him." The expression on the Shen Emperor's face froze. After he regained his senses, he loosened his grip on the sword and put it away. He used his sleeve to gently wipe the blade and said in a low voice, "It's not good to send troops. It's just one northern state. Our Shin dynasty has more than 20 states. It doesn't matter if there's one more northern state or one less northern state. Don't you think?" Chapter 519. Your Majesty is wise. If even the bitter sect doesn't want to provoke them, the other two sects won't easily offend them either. Let's give up on the northern state in exchange for the stability of the other states. The Shin Emperor spoke, and the officials all agreed. A few of them showed hesitation on their faces. Their lips moved as if they wanted to say something, but due to the general trend, they couldn't say anything in the end. The young Shin Emperor put his sword back into its scabbard, waved his hand and said, "Disperse. Order the northern army to withdraw from the northern state and return to the Mara state. Defend the northern defense line to the death. We can't let them occupy the new state again." The officials obeyed and retreated. The Shen prince paced back and forth in the main hall. He gritted his teeth and said, "The Great Zhou, it must be the damn Great Zhou that's causing trouble." The Shen kingdom and the Great Zhou had hundreds of years of hatred. When the last central dynasty on the Zhou continent collapsed, the Shen kingdom was the most powerful among the countries on the Zhou continent. They wanted to take advantage of that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to unify the Zhou continent, but the newly established Great Zhou led troops to attack the new capital and almost destroyed the country. That war broke the backbone of the Shen kingdom, causing them to be unable to recover for decades. This was the eternal pain in the hearts of every Shen kingdom citizen and every Shen royal family member. The dying dream of the previous emperors was to conquer the Great Zhou dynasty and unify the ancestral continent. They originally had this opportunity, but the Shao royal family had already decayed to the extreme in the past few years. The Shen kingdom had secretly prepared for this, and then that woman ascended to the throne. She used 5 years to lead the Great Zhou back to its peak, causing the Shen kingdom's decades of preparation to go up in smoke. The Shen emperor took a deep breath and squeezed out a voice from between his teeth. "Venerables and elders? None of them are reliable at critical times. So, Your Majesty, do you want to consider cooperating with us?" A voice suddenly sounded. The Shen emperor's expression changed. He looked at a shadow in the corner and said sternly, "Who's there? Come out." Nanjun, Great Zhou. Under the towering monument of heroes, the southern army of the Great Zhou and the northern army of the Shen kingdom faced each other across the river. Under the iron fist of official Li, in recent days, no one from the Shen kingdom dared to cross the border and cause trouble. Instead, they faced each other across the river. Shen country's north bang. A stream of light flew over from afar and flew into the Shen country's northern army's tent. 2 hours later, there was a sudden commotion in the northern Indian army, and many people began to move. When the sentry of the southern army saw this scene, he immediately said, "Quick, the people of the Shen nation are making a move. Quickly inform Commander Zhang." After receiving the news, Commander Zhang immediately left the military camp and went to the border. He asked in a deep voice, "What happened to the people of the Shen kingdom?" Several high-ranking military officers stood by the riverbank and looked at the other side with puzzlement on their faces. At first, when the northern army of the Shen kingdom made a move, they thought that the other party was going to provoke them on a large scale. They were already on full alert and prepared for war. However, the actions of the other side made them somewhat confused. After the commotion in the northern army of the Shen kingdom, they began to tear down the tents of the camp, smashing the stoves built outside, and pulling down the northern army flag erected in front of the camp. A deputy general was puzzled and said in shock, "What are they doing? Are they going to rebuild the camp?" Another general said, "Why does it look like they're retreating?" "Damn, they're really leaving. The northern army is retreating from the border. What are they doing?" All the soldiers of the southern army stood by the riverbank and watched as the northern army of the Shen kingdom tore down their camp, leaving behind a mess, and retreated. Some of them had been guarding the border for decades and had fought with the northern army of the Shen kingdom for decades. This was the first time they had seen such a strange scene. This was the border between the two countries. How could the Shen kingdom withdraw their army for no reason? When the generals saw this, they became vigilant. What trick is this? Are they deliberately acting like they're retreating to make us lower our guard? Why are the people of the Shen kingdom so careless? We still can't let our guard down. Just as everyone was worried, a dragon's roar came from the sky. Two streams of light landed in the crowd. Commander Zhang walked forward and cupped his hands. "Lord Li, the northern army of the Shen kingdom suddenly retreated for no reason. In your opinion, this?" Li Mu smiled and said, "Don't worry, this is a normal military movement. The Shen kingdom and the northern kingdom are already independent. Naturally, the northern army will not be allowed to stay. From now on, the Great Zhou will no longer border the Shen kingdom. The soldiers of the southern army can live in peace." What? The Shen kingdom and the northern kingdom are independent? How is this possible? When the generals heard this, they all exclaimed. The northern kingdom was a part of the Shen kingdom, just like the southern county would always be an inseparable territory of the Great Zhou. Whether it was an external invasion or internal strife in the southern county, the imperial court would not sit idly by. Think about it. Would the Great Zhou allow the southern county to be independent? Only Commander Zhang was shocked. He looked at Li Mu and asked, "Lord Li, did you do this?" Li Mu waved his hand and said, "I only did a little work. It's not worth mentioning." "All right, I'll have to trouble Commander Zhang to go to the county office and let them tell the public about this matter so that the people of the southern county can rest assured." Commander Zhang came back to his senses after a long time. He cupped his hands and bowed deeply to Li Mu. He said, "I admire Lord Li from the bottom of my heart." The people of the Shen kingdom provoked the Great Zhou at the border of the northern kingdom. They thought that Lord Li would beat the northern army of the Shen kingdom until they were afraid, and that would be the end of this matter. They did not expect that he would directly take drastic measures to make the northern kingdom of the Shen kingdom independent. The northern kingdom of the Shen kingdom would become an independent country. This way, the Great Zhou and the Shen kingdom would no longer be neighbors, and the southern county would no longer be harassed by the Shen kingdom. He did not know how Lord Li did it, but there was no doubt that from now on, the soldiers of the southern army would have a good life. Once this news was spread, the entire southern army was excited. When the people of South County heard about this exciting news from the officials, Li Mu had already ridden on Xianxia and was on his way home. As for Ao Run, because of his recent good performance, he was given a long vacation by Li Mu and returned to the eastern county to reunite with his wife and concubine. On this day, when the officials of the Great Zhou were attending the morning court, a strange phenomenon suddenly occurred in the ancestral temple of the imperial palace. Golden light shone out from the ancestral temple and could be seen clearly everywhere in the divine capital. Mr. Mei hurried to the ancestral temple to check and soon returned to the Ziwei palace. He said, "Your Majesty, for some reason, the psychic power of the southern county's psychic power cauldron in the ancestral temple suddenly increased. The golden light of the ancestral temple was emitted by this cauldron." When the officials heard this, they were both happy and suspicious. They were happy because the increase of any county's psychic power was beneficial to the condensation of Emperor Qi. Soon, the Great Zhou would have another seventh realm powerhouse. They were suspicious because the southern county and the Shen kingdom bordered each other. The people of the southern county were often harassed by the people of the Shen kingdom. Their psychic power had always been ranked last among the 36 counties. Why would it suddenly increase? The originally quiet imperial court immediately became noisy. What happened in the southern county? Psychic power wouldn't increase for no reason. Could it be related to the Shen kingdom? But the imperial court hasn't taken any action against the Shen kingdom recently. This matter is really strange. Assistant Minister of the Secretariat Lu Yi suddenly thought of something and muttered, "Lord Li seemed to have gone to the southern county a few days ago." When the official beside him heard this, he immediately guessed, "Could it be that Lord Li did something?" Another official said decisively, "It must be. If Lord Li isn't in the divine capital, then he must have gone on a secret mission. Silence. A voice came from behind the curtain, causing the originally noisy court to instantly quiet down. Her Majesty the Empress now had absolute authority in the imperial court. No matter how many people talked about her behind her back, there was an undeniable fact that she was the ruler of the Great Zhou's resurgence. Whether it was the people or the court, many voices believed that the Empress's achievements had already surpassed Emperor Wen's. Behind the curtain, Zhou said calmly, the increase in psychic power in the southern county might be because of the independence of the Shen Kingdom and the northern Bang. There's no need to doubt. If there's anything, please report. If there's nothing, the court will be dismissed. The court fell into a long silence. Seeing that no one was going to report, Zhou Yi's figure gradually disappeared behind the curtain. After a long silence, the first voice appeared in the court. Then, it became noisy again. What did Her Majesty just say? The Shen Kingdom and the Northern Bang are independent? When did this happen? Why didn't the departments receive any news? This heavy news shook the hearts of the courtiers. The last time they talked about the Shin Nation was when the Northern Army in the Shin Nation's Northern Army provoked a dispute at the border. How long had it been since then? The Shin Nation's Northern Army was gone. It was no wonder that the psychic power in the southern county had increased. The Shen Kingdom was divided, so how could they bother to harass the Great Zhou? Moreover, although the states of the Shen Kingdom had always been independent, the division of a state and independence was something that happened in the previous dynasty of the Shen Kingdom. They would not believe that the Great Zhou had not interfered in this. After hearing this news, they recalled what had happened recently and found some clues. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice said, I was still curious. Manager Wei was doing well in the Ministry of Justice and was about to be promoted. Why did Her Majesty suddenly send him to the southern county? I think he didn't go to the southern county of the Great Zhou, but the northern Bang of the Shen Kingdom. Brilliant, this move is really brilliant. After losing the northern Bang, if the Shen Kingdom wants to provoke the Great Zhou again, they can only bypass the Ghost Realm from the west. From now on, the southern border of the Great Zhou will be free of worries. After the morning court dispersed, the officials discussed for a long time in the Ziwei Hall before returning to their respective offices. Soon, the news of the northern Bang of the Shen Kingdom's independence spread to the ears of the people of the divine capital. The people were still puzzled by the golden light emitted from the palace just now. When they heard the news, they were all excited. Because of the previous emperor's decree, they did not have a good impression of the people of the Shen Kingdom. In addition, the people of the Shen Kingdom provoked them at the border, causing the people to hate them even more. They were very happy to see the Shen Kingdom on fire. Li Mu was 10 miles away from the divine capital. He asked Xianxia to transform into her human form and fly into the city at a low altitude. Ever since she entered the divine capital, Xianxia's eyes had been looking around. Clearly, for a little female dragon who had grown up in the sea and had only been to the Shen Kingdom with Li Mu, the divine capital of the Great Zhou was the real world of flowers to her. Everything here was so new and interesting. Looking at the children on the street happily licking sugar-coated haws, she casually took one from the haystack on the shoulder of a passing sugar-coated haws vendor. She put it in her mouth and took a bite. The sweet and sour taste made her eyes turn into crescents. Seeing that she was about to leave after eating the sugar-coated haws, the vendor suddenly became anxious. He hurriedly chased after her and said, Hey miss, you're so beautiful. Why don't you pay for your food? Li Mu took out a few copper coins and handed them to him, saying, I'm sorry. Is this enough? It's enough, it's enough. The vendor nodded. Just as he was about to take the coins, he looked up and saw Li Mu. He was stunned for a moment and then said happily, Lord Li, when did you come back? I haven't seen you in a long time. Li Mu said, I just entered the city. The vendor immediately said, Then I can't accept this money. This little thing isn't worth much. I'll just take it as a gift to this miss. I wish Lord Li and this miss a long and happy life together and have a child soon. In the hearts of the people of the divine capital, his image as a lecher could not be changed. Li Mu forced the payment and did not explain to him. He took Xianxia to the Li mansion. Along the way, there were many people who greeted him warmly. In the crowd, one of the people seemed to have realized something and whispered, The Shen Kingdom and the Northern Bang didn't become independent earlier or later. They just had to become independent when Lord Li wasn't here. He looked at Li Mu's back and asked loudly, "Lord Li, where have you been these days?" Li Mu looked back at him and said, "South County." Looking at his back, the man slapped his thigh and said repeatedly, "I knew it, I knew it." After Li Mu entered the city, it took him a long time to reach the door. In the Li mansion, when Xiaobai happily ran over to open the door and Lu Hanyan and the others walked to the door, they all looked at Ao Xianxia who was behind Li Mu. In order to give the Empress a surprise, Li Mu did not tell her about Xianxia. Of course, he also did not tell Lu Hanyan and the others. Lu Hanyan pulled Li Mu to the side and asked in a low voice, "What's going on?" Before Li Mu could explain, Lu Hanyan pinched his waist. She glared at Li Mu and said angrily, "Have I been too good to you? You even dare to bring her back without saying anything." What about you? Let me tell you, I will only forgive you this time. There won't be a next time. Otherwise, I will bring Sister Qing and Wan Wan back to Mount Baiyun. You can live with these little vixens." Li Mu looked at her and said innocently, "What are you thinking? You didn't agree. How would I dare to bring people home casually? This is the mount I caught for Her Majesty." He waved his hand at Xianxia and said, "Xianxia, let them see your identity." Xianxia nodded obediently. A pair of dragon horns gradually grew out of her forehead. Xiaobai grabbed Li Mu's arm and subconsciously hid behind him. The pressure of the dragon clan made her, who only had a trace of the heavenly fox bloodline, naturally feel afraid. As the top race on the continent, Lu Hanyan and the others had never seen the dragon clan before. They surrounded Xianxia and sized her up, making her feel very uncomfortable. However, after secretly glancing at Li Mu, no matter how uncomfortable she was, she could only endure it. There was a fluctuation in the space in the courtyard. The Empress slowly appeared with Zhongling in her arms. "Father." When Zhongling saw Li Mu, she immediately flew over happily. Li Mu held her in his arms and walked to the Empress's side. He looked at Xianxia and said, "Your Majesty, this is the mount that I promised you. This dragon has committed a crime in the South County. I punish her to be your mount for 3 years." Ao Xianxia looked at the woman in front of her and finally knew who her master for the next 3 years would be. Her future master was not only a beautiful young lady, but also a very powerful young lady. She was even more powerful than her father and even her grandfather. In front of such a powerhouse, her pride as a member of the dragon clan quickly dissipated without a trace. Before Li Mu came back, he was worried that Lu Hanyan and Li Qing would be unhappy that he only gave the Empress a mount. Later, it turned out that he was thinking too much. If it was just an ordinary gift, they would definitely feel unbalanced in their hearts. However, this was a dragon. Other than the Empress, who else was qualified to find a dragon as a mount? 4 hours later, Li Mu brought the women and the Empress, who had changed her appearance, to walk on the streets of the divine capital. Ao Xianxia followed behind the Empress step by step, looking like a competent follower. The women were shopping while Li Mu silently absorbed telekinesis. In a short 4 hours, the telekinesis of the people of the divine capital had increased by several times. Lu Hanyan walked in front and asked Ao Xianxia, "What did you do when you were in the Thousand Fox country?" Ao Xianxia said, "Nothing. I just cultivated in my room." Lu Hanyan glanced at Li Mu and asked, "What about him?" Ao Xianxia shook his head and said, "I don't know. My lord stays in the room with that queen every day. I don't know what he's doing." Li Mu raised his eyebrows and immediately explained, "What do you mean you don't know what he's doing?" "I didn't do anything. If you don't believe me, you can ask His Majesty. I stayed in the Thousand Fox country for a few days to wait for Lord Zhou. In order to promote the stability of the southern border." Zhou snorted and said, "What's the use of asking me? I don't know what you did with that vixen in the room." Li Mu had no choice but to say, "I'm wholeheartedly for the people. Even if you don't believe me, you should listen to the voices of the people." On the streets not far away, there were many people discussing the matter of the Shen country. "I heard that the matter of the Shen country's northern bang was done by Lord Li." "No way." "What do you mean no way?" "Shen country's northern bang became independent, and Lord Li just happened to come back from the southern county. Even if you think with your feet, you know why Lord Li went to the southern county. With Lord Li around, it's a blessing for the people and the great show." The people chatted for a while, and the topic gradually changed. Didn't they say that Her Majesty and Lord Li have a child? When does Her Majesty plan to make Lord Li the Empress? I want to know too. We're so anxious. But if that's the case, what about Lord Li's wife? That's true, but if Lord Li can't be with Her Majesty, I'm afraid everyone will be upset. Soon, no one beside Li Mu spoke. Lu Hanyan was expressionless. Li Qing lowered her head and did not say anything. Wan Wan was at a loss. Xiao Bai looked at Li Mu and then at Zhou Yi. Li Mu and Zhou Yi looked at each other, and the Empress immediately looked away. Chapter 5:20. Li Mu heard the cries of the people, but so did Lu Hanyan and the Empress. The Empress was the first to break the awkwardness. She glanced at Li Mu and said, I still have a few reports to deal with. I will return to the palace first. With that, she turned and walked into the crowd, quickly disappearing. Lu Hanyan also glanced at Li Mu and said, Go back. Why are you still standing here? Do you want to hear the cries of the people again? Life was full of surprises. If Li Mu knew that this would be the case when he returned to Shen capital, he would rather stay in the Shen kingdom for a few more days and do his part to liberate the oppressed people of the world. As expected, Lu Hanyan went to sleep with Li Qing that night. This meant that Li Mu would have to sleep alone in the study. In Li Qing's room, the two of them were still awake. They called Wan Wan and Xiao Bai to play cards together. Ever since they no longer needed to cultivate, they had more things to do for entertainment. Li Qing glanced in the direction of Li Mu's study and then looked at Lu Hanyan. She hesitated and said, He just came back. It's not good for us to do this, is it? Lu Hanyan looked at her and asked, He is our husband. Why would the people say such things? Are you not angry at all that you want them to be together? Li Qing only smiled and said, Sister, didn't you accept Her Majesty long ago? Why don't you tell him directly? Lu Hanyan snorted and said, Wouldn't that be letting them off easy? I won't say anything. I want to see how long they can pretend to be stupid for. Anyway, it's quite fun to watch the show. Then, she glanced at Li Qing and said, You are not allowed to say it either. You are not his leader now. Don't try to protect him every time. Li Qing could only nod. Lu Hanyan then looked at Xiao Bai and Wan Wan. The two girls immediately promised. Li Mu was lying on the bed in the study. He had a lot on his mind and couldn't fall asleep. Suddenly, he heard a creak in his ear. The window of the study room was pushed open, and a petite body got into his bed. Xiao Bai mysteriously whispered into Li Mu's ear, Benefactor, let me tell you a secret. Don't tell Sister Lu that I told you. Li Mu was puzzled. What secret? Xiao Bai leaned close to Li Mu's ear and whispered, Sister Lu agreed to you and Sister Zhou a long time ago. She said that she wanted to see how long you guys could play dumb for. She wanted to watch the show. After Li Mu came back to his senses, he kissed her hard on the cheek. In this family, Xiao Bai would always be his sweet little jacket. Although Lu Hanyan had expressed such thoughts several times, as the first wife of the Li family, if she didn't make it clear, no one would dare to act blindly without thinking. Since he knew what she was thinking, Li Mu didn't have anything to worry about. The next morning, he ate breakfast and went to Jianghu Palace as usual. The Empress wasn't there. Only Mr. Mei was. Li Mu asked casually, Where's Her Majesty? Mr. Mei said, She's admiring the flowers in the imperial garden. Why are you looking for Her Majesty? Li Mu sat behind the table stacked with memorials and said, Nothing. I'm starting to get busy. Mr. Mei left Jianghu Palace and went to the imperial garden. He said to Zhou Yi, who was staring at a bunch of roses in a daze, Your Majesty, Li Mu is here. Zhou Yi didn't say anything. She picked a rose and peeled off the petals one by one. Mr. Mei and Shangguan Li looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Her Majesty loved and cherished flowers, but now she was picking flowers. This meant that she was in a bad mood. When she came back from outside the palace yesterday, she was in a bad mood. Without a doubt, someone must have provoked her again. Zhou Yi peeled off a flower until only the bud was left, then returned to Jianghu Palace. Li Mu was reading memorials. He looked up and said, Your Majesty, yesterday on the street. Without waiting for him to finish, Zhou Yi said, The people speak without thinking. I didn't take it to heart. You don't have to worry about it. Just explain it to your wife. Li Mu shook his head and said, although they speak without thinking, this is the voice of the people. It represents the will of the people. Zhou Yi didn't expect Li Mu to say this. Her heart beat faster. She forced herself to appear calm and asked, what do you mean? A few days ago in Jianghu country, Li Mu had secretly confessed to her. With the Empress's guard against Huanji, how could she take the initiative to break off the spirit conch when Li Mu and Huanji were alone in a room in the middle of the night? He had made up his mind with great difficulty, but she pretended that nothing had happened. Now she was asking the obvious. She couldn't let Li Mu take the initiative every time. Moreover, with their status, there were some things that Li Mu couldn't take the initiative. Li Mu lowered his head again and said, I don't mean anything else. It's fine as long as your majesty doesn't take it to heart. Although Zhou Yi wasn't young, she had no experience in relationships. She was too thin-skinned. If she was impatient, she wouldn't be able to win the Empress' heart. It was better to take it step by step. Li Mu read a few more memorials. Then, he rubbed the space between his eyebrows and rested on the table. Zhou Yi leaned absent-mindedly on the dragon throne. Her mind was in a mess. She inadvertently glanced at Li Mu. She discovered that he was smiling even as he slept. She didn't know what he was dreaming about. She was a bit angry. Her heart was complicated, but he was sleeping soundly. She looked left and right. Seeing that there was no one around, she secretly made a hand seal. Suddenly, an image appeared before her eyes. This was Li Mu's dream that she had seen through the dream peeping technique. Zhou Yi pursed her lips. I want to see what you're dreaming about. She was very familiar with the place in the image. It was her imperial garden. In the midst of the flowers, Li Mu was holding a woman's hand. They were admiring the flowers. He dared to take another woman to her imperial garden in his dream. Zhou Yi was angry. She was about to disturb Li Mu's beautiful dream. However, when she looked up and saw the woman's face, her body couldn't help but tremble. The woman Li Mu was holding hands with in the imperial garden in his dream was none other than herself. The anger in Zhou Qiong's heart instantly disappeared without a trace. His eyes were filled with joy and anticipation as he stared at the scene in the sky. Even his breathing slowed down. At this time, the sound of footsteps came from outside Chang'e Palace. Mr. Mei and Shangguan Li walked in. Zhou Yi immediately dispelled the image and sat up straight. However, her eyes swept over Li Mu from time to time. She was extremely curious about what he was dreaming about. Mr. Mei and Shangguan Li walked into Chang'e Palace. The sound of footsteps suddenly woke Li Mu up. He sat up straight and looked at the Empress guiltily. He was about to continue reading when Zhou Yi suddenly asked, I saw that you were sleeping soundly. What did you dream about? Li Mu shook his head and said, I didn't dream about anything. Mr. Mei glanced at him and said, Ali and I were standing outside the hall. We saw you smiling. How could you say you didn't dream about anything? Li Mu smiled embarrassedly and said, I dreamed about my wife. Zhou Yi's face turned red for no reason. She quickly returned to normal and said, Chang'e Palace is stuffy. Come with me to the Imperial Garden. Ali, Mei Wei, you two stay here and tidy up. Li Mu stood up and said, As you wish. Shangguan Li took a few deep breaths as she tidied up the Imperial desk. She asked, Is it stuffy here? And His Majesty just came back from the Imperial Garden. Mr. Mei glanced at her and said, Hurry up and do your work. Why do you have so many questions? In the Imperial Garden, Zhou Yi walked in front. She was in a good mood and had a smile on her face. Li Mu followed behind her with a faint smile on his face. Chapter 521. In the inner mansion department, Shangguan Li and Mr. Mei each came out with a box of high-quality incense. Shangguan Li was puzzled. That's strange. When did Her Majesty like to use incense? Didn't she hate these things before? She said that this kind of fragrance makes it difficult to concentrate and makes one sleepy. Mr. Mei shrugged and said, It's not just Her Majesty who is strange. Li Mu has already treated Chang'e Palace as his sleeping place. He doesn't read many reports every day and has to lie down and sleep for at least 4 hours. It seems that having too many women at home isn't always a good thing. Chang'e Palace. Several burners of incense were burning. Ao Isin leaned against a pillar and dozed off. There was a trace of crystal at the corner of her mouth and a happy smile on her face. The fate of being someone's mount was completely different from what she had imagined. She thought that she would be ridden every day in the future, going through wind and rain, waking up early and sleeping late. She didn't expect that the life of a mount would be to live in a large and luxurious palace. She had nothing to do every day except wait for 3 meals in the morning, afternoon, and evening. There were countless delicious dishes here, unlike the Dragon Palace, where there were only lobsters and abalones. She had long been tired of eating them. Opposite Ao Isin, Li Mu lay on the table and continued to weave his dream. With the Empress peeping from outside, he didn't dare to have any adult scenes in his dream, but occasionally holding hands and hugging was still okay. Although his relationship with the Empress hadn't developed further in reality, in the long run, it could always melt the defenses in her heart. On the dragon throne, Zhou Yi was holding a book upside down. The content of the book wasn't words, but a dynamic scene. She used the book to cover it so that only she could see it. In the scene, Li Mu was planting vegetables on the grassland beside the lake. In the flower field not far away, another Zhou Yi was holding a pair of scissors and trimming the flowers. Leaning on the dragon throne, Zhou Yi's face was hidden behind the pages of the book. A look of longing appeared on her face. This was the life she longed for. Was this Li Mu's plan for the future? A possibility suddenly appeared in her mind. What would she do if Li Mu told her what he thought? She had never experienced such a thing before. Just thinking about it made her feel a little helpless. These past few days, she had fantasized countless times. If there really was such a day, they could confess their feelings to each other. How would they get along in the future? Her heart was nervous and expectant. When Li Mu got up from the table and looked at Zhou Yi, she immediately put down the book in her hand and hurriedly stood up. She said, "I'm going to the Imperial Garden alone to relax. Don't follow me." Of course, Li Mu knew that if no one wanted to follow them, it meant that he shouldn't. The Empress was really too much. When it came to relationships, she was so hesitant and wishy-washy. She was not straightforward and decisive at all. He had already made it so obvious in his dream, but she still pretended to be confused until the end. He was the Empress. Could it be that he should be the first to speak about this kind of thing? Ao Run had said something that was right. If you liked someone, you should fight for it. Only by fighting for it would you have a chance. The Empress obviously didn't take this advice to heart. However, this kind of thing couldn't be rushed. Li Mu planned to take a few days off and give her the cold shoulder first. He would see if she was anxious when the time came. He wasn't in a hurry to woo the Empress. The matters at home were more troublesome. He had already slept in the study for several days. As the first wife of the Li family, Lu Hanyan was very dissatisfied with the voices of the common people. Every time Li Mu wanted to coax her, he was rejected at the door by her. This couldn't go on. Just as Li Mu was thinking about this matter, in the Li residence, Li Qing said to Lu Hanyan, "Sister's anger has almost subsided. Don't tell me you're still planning to let him sleep in the study tonight?" Lu Hanyan glanced at Xiao Bai and said indifferently, "I think he's sleeping very comfortably in the study. Maybe he's already so happy that he doesn't want to go home. If he still doesn't take the initiative to come over today, he'll have to sleep in the study for the rest of the month." Xiao Bai, who was practicing magic, moved her ears and quietly slipped out. Not long after, in the Changle Palace, Li Mu asked in surprise, "She really said that?" Xiao Bai nodded and said, "Benefactor, you'd better go and find Sister Lu tonight. Otherwise, you'll have to sleep in the study for the rest of the month." Li Mu picked her up and spun her around. He said, "Okay, Xiao Bai. From now on, you'll stay undercover by their side. If there's any news, report to me at any time." Xiao Bai smiled and said, "Don't worry. I'll always be on Benefactor's side." Only when she lowered her head did a trace of disappointment flash through her eyes. Actually, she preferred her benefactor to sleep in the study. This was because only when he slept in the study did he completely belong to her. However, she also knew that her benefactor didn't belong to her alone. As long as the other 2 sisters were happy, and her benefactor was happy, she would also be happy. It was night time. Li Mu pushed open the door to Lu Hanyan's room. She was reading when she glanced at Li Mu and asked, "What's wrong? You're finally willing to sleep on the bed in the study today?" Li Mu sat next to her and said, "The bed in the study is too hard. It's more comfortable to sleep here." Lu Hanyan said, "Although the bed in the study is hard, Xiao Bai's body is soft." Li Mu hugged her and said, "Don't be angry. That's just the nonsense of the commoners. I can't abandon you all to become His Majesty's Empress. Even if I agreed, His Majesty wouldn't agree. If you want to blame someone, blame me." "Don't blame His Majesty." Lu Hanyan rolled her eyes at him and said, "His Majesty even plans to give us such a precious imperial qi. Why would I blame His Majesty? It's all your fault. While I wasn't here, you went around fooling around. Even His Majesty fell into your trap. And that fox from the Yao Kingdom, those two nieces, and that big sister Sue. How come I haven't seen you mention her in a long time?" "Oh right, and that dragon you brought back," Li Mu said indignantly. "You're framing me. What could have happened between me and Xianxia? I swear to the heavens that there's nothing between us. Nothing happened at all." "Then what about the others?" Lu Hanyan looked at Li Mu and said angrily, "You're really hesitating." She bit Li Mu's chest and threw him onto the bed. Not long after, the candlelight in the room flickered violently and finally went out. The next day, noon. In Changle Palace, Zhou Yi sat on the dragon throne and looked outside countless times. Finally, she couldn't help but ask, "When Li Mu left yesterday, did he say anything?" Mr. May said, "No, but he hasn't come yet. He probably won't come in the morning." Zhou Yi stood up and planned to go to the Li residence, but she quickly sat down again. Because of what happened on the streets of Chengdu last time, she didn't know how to face Lu Hanyan. After thinking about it, she dismissed the idea of going to the Li residence. In the Li residence, Li Mu didn't get up until the sun was high in the sky. In fact, he planned to sleep a little longer, but the constantly vibrating sound transmission instrument forced him to get up. At first, he thought it was Ting Xian calling, but after finding the source, he realized that this time, it was the Fulu School sound transmission instrument. It was used by Jianghu to contact him. Li Mu injected his magic power and asked, "Senior brother, what's the matter?" In the instrument, Jianghu's voice was a little heavy. He said, "Junior brother, you need to go back to Ancestral Court immediately. Remember to bring Qing and martial niece Hanyan along." Chapter 522. Li Mu had never seen Xianxia speak in such a solemn tone. Hearing this, he also became serious and asked, "Senior brother, what happened?" Xianxia said briefly, "The two uncle masters are nearing the end of their lifespans and have returned to the Ancestral Court." Xianxia's short sentence had already conveyed a lot of information. Li Mu said in a deep voice, "I understand, we will leave immediately." After putting away the sound transmission Dharma artifact, Li Mu had a complicated expression and sighed softly. Ever since Yuzhen Zi advanced to the 7th realm, the Fulu School had 4 7th realm powerhouses for a short period of time. 2 of the Grand Elders had left the sect decades ago and had been wandering outside, searching for opportunities to break through. It seemed that they hadn't found that opportunity these days. As disciples of the Fulu School, Li Mu, Lu Hanyan, and Li Qing explained the situation. The 3 of them didn't delay and immediately set off for the northern region with Zhongling Baiyun Mountain, the ancestral court of Fulu School. In the Dao Palace of the main peak, all the elders, including the sect master, gathered. They couldn't hide their heavy expressions. Jianghu was silent for a moment and asked, "Is there no other way? Can't the ancestral court gather the materials for a single heavenly secret talisman?" Sect master Xianxia shook his head and said, "The only heavenly secret talisman made of materials has already been used on Uncle Master Fu Darozi." Dan Xia Peak's first seat Dan Yongzi thought for a moment and said, "I will go to the Pill Cauldron sect. They don't lack spirit herbs. I might be able to gather 2 if I use Fu Lu to exchange with them." Xianxia continued to shake his head and said, "I have already asked Senior Sister Wuchen. Half a month ago, the Pill Cauldron sect failed to refine 2 important pills. They also lack spirit herbs. Moreover, the 2 uncle masters know that they have no hope of advancing, so they don't want to waste any more materials." As his voice fell, the atmosphere in the hall fell silent for a long time. The death of the 2 grand elders was undoubtedly a huge blow to the Fulu School. It would greatly reduce the strength of the sect. The elders present also suffered a heavy blow to their hearts. He had cultivated bitterly all his life in order to achieve immortality, but in the end, he still couldn't avoid dust to dust, and dust to dust. Wouldn't the two grand elders be their future selves as well? At this time, 3 figures rushed in from outside the palace. Xianxia looked at Li Mu, Li Qing, and Lu Hanyan and said, "You're here. The 2 martial uncles wanted to see you before they died." Li Mu asked straightforwardly, "Can't we use the heavenly secret talisman to stall for time?" Xianxia shook his head. "We don't have enough materials. Moreover, the talisman of heavenly secrets is very useful for those at the 6th realm. However, with the cultivation of the 2 uncle masters, it can only extend their lifespans by 3 years at most. The 2 uncle masters are unwilling to waste resources. For cultivators at the 7th realm, it was very likely that they would go into seclusion for more than 2 years. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. At that time, they still couldn't avoid the fate of death. Li Mu, I can think of a way to procure the materials. 3 years is 3 years. There's no need. 2 figures floated in from outside the hall. The 2 old men in linen clothes gazed at Li Mu's group of 3 with gratification in their eyes as they said, "Not bad. Even though the 2 of us old fellows are about to die soon, the talisman sect still has a future." Looking at the 2 old men, the peak masters cupped their hands. Martial uncles. This was the first time Li Mu saw the 2 grand elders of the Fulu school. Their auras weren't strong and they looked like old men who were about to die. However, their eyes were extremely clear, without any turbidity. Li Mu and the other 2 cupped their hands and bowed. "Greetings, martial uncles." The old man on the left looked at Li Mu and his praise grew. He said, "Since ancient times, those who walked the path of psychokinesis were all people with great perseverance. Junior brother Fu Daozi has taken in a good disciple. In the next 100 years, the Fulu school will depend on you." Li Mu asked, "How many years do you 2 martial uncles have left?" Xianxia sighed and said, "Martial uncles Xianxia and Xianxia are twin brothers. Their lifespans are close to 360 years. Now, they only have 2 years left." Li Mu, 2 years plus 3 years is 5 years. 5 years ago, I hadn't cultivated yet. Now, I'm only 1 step away from the 6th realm. Maybe in these 5 years, you 2 martial uncles have a chance to advance." Xianxia smiled and said, "We know our own cultivation better than anyone else. Not to mention 5 years, even if you give us another 50 years, we won't be able to touch the threshold of the path integration realm. In the entire Zhu province, only the Empress of the Great Zhou has a chance to advance to this realm in her lifetime." He glanced at Li Mu and the other heads and said, 360 years, 180 years. We've lived long enough. In the next 2 years, we'll record our lifelong understanding of talisman Dao and cultivation for our descendants. Our cultivation can help 2 disciples in the creation realm advance to Dongxian. You can also refine our corpses into corpses to enhance the strength of the sect and guard against the invasion of the devil path. In the silence of the crowd, the 2 of them floated away. Not long after, Xianxia called Li Mu to a side hall and said, "Once you 2 martial uncles die, the strength of the sect will be greatly reduced. The devil path won't let go of such an opportunity." For hundreds of years, the devil path has attacked Mount Baiyun several times for this reason. Li Mu moved Zhongling out of the demon emperor's space and stretched out his hand. The shrunken Dao bell floated in his palm. He said to Xianxia, "Zhongling has already transformed. I'll leave the body of the bell on Mount Baiyun. It's enough to deal with the devil path. If the devil path really makes a move, the great show court won't just stand by and watch." Xianxia shook his head and said, "Uncle Masters, you still have 2 years left in your lifespan. Keep junior brother Dao Zhong to protect yourself first. Your safety is more important. I summoned you back to the mountain this time for another important matter." He looked at Li Mu and said, "According to past practice, before the elders of the sect die, they will pass on their lifetime's cultivation to a core disciple. Martial uncle's cultivation can allow 2 5th realm disciples to advance to the 6th realm. They want to choose between you and the 2 martial nephews. What do you think?" For a large sect, this was a very important inheritance. Before the sect's experts died, they would leave everything to the younger disciples. This was to preserve the sect's strength to the greatest extent, and ensure that the inheritance would not be severed. Li Mu didn't answer. He only said, "Let's use the Tianji talisman to extend the lifespan of martial uncles for as long as possible. What if a miracle happens during this period?" Xianxia sighed and said, "The sect's resources are already not enough to write a saint-level Fu Lu." Li Mu said, "Senior martial brother, you don't have to worry about the materials. I'll take care of it." Xianxia asked, "How can you take care of it?" Saint-level Fu Lu was extremely precious. Even with the entire Fu Lu school's resources, it was still difficult to gather them. How could he compare to the entire Fu Lu school by himself? Li Mu took out the spirit snail and inserted his magic power. Before he could speak, the Empress's voice came from the other side. "Where have you been? You haven't come to Chang'e Palace for 2 days. You didn't even say hello." Li Mu said, "Something urgent happened in the sect. I brought my wife to Mount Baiyun." Zhou asked, "When will you be back?" Li Mu said, "I'm not sure at the moment. There's something I'd like to ask for your Majesty's help with." Zhou said, "What is it? Speak." Li Mu said straightforwardly, "There are 2 grand elders in the sect who are nearing the end of their lifespan. I'd like to refine 2 Tianji talismans." Before he could finish, Zhou said, "The Imperial Court probably only has enough materials for 1 Tianji talisman. I'll have the apricot guard send it to you immediately." Hearing the urgency of the situation, the Empress hung up the spirit snail and prepared the materials Li Mu needed. Beside Li Mu, Xianxia opened his mouth and said, "That's rude of me. I haven't thanked your Majesty yet." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "We're family. There's no need to thank me." Xianxia pondered for a while but still couldn't understand what Li Mu meant by family. Then he thought of something more important and said, "The sect still has some talisman liquid. I'll go to the other 5 sects personally. I should be able to gather the materials for the other Tianji talisman." Li Mu shook his head and said, "There's no need. We don't need to ask outsiders for help." He took out another talisman and inserted his magic power. Soon, Phantom Princess's voice came from it. "The sun has risen from the west. You're actually looking for me?" Li Mu said embarrassedly, "I have something I need your help with." "I need some high-grade spirit medicine," Phantom Princess said calmly. "Will you come and get it yourself, or should I have someone send it to you?" Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "I'll go get it myself." After putting away the talisman, Xianxia looked at him and asked, "Who's on the other side?" Li Mu said, "The Queen of the Thousand Fox Kingdom." He said there was no need to ask outsiders for help. Xianxia thought for a moment and asked with uncertainty, "The Queen of the Thousand Fox Kingdom is your wife?" Chapter 523. After thinking for a long time, Xianxia looked at Li Mu and said solemnly, "How about I give up my position earlier? I believe that under your leadership, F. Lu School will become better and better." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "My cultivation is low and not enough to convince the others. Senior brother, you should be the headmaster for now." As a member of the F. Lu School, the F. Lu School had treated him well and had even given him the treasure of the school. Even if he had to spend a lot of precious resources and could only help the 2 Taishang elders live for another 3 years, Li Mu would not hesitate. Although asking the Empress and Phantom Princess for help was a bit of a freeloader, if the Empress was willing, Li Mu could be hers and there was no need to be so calculative. As for Phantom Princess, Li Mu had helped her so many times, so it would not be too much for her to help Li Mu once, right? The Empress said that after the materials were gathered, she would have Mr. May send it over. Li Mu did not think about it earlier and only now realized that he needed the help of a level 7 primordial spirit to write the F. Lu. If Mr. May sent it over, wouldn't he be possessed by Xianxia again? If he had a choice, of course he would want the Empress to possess him. So Li Mu took out the spirit snail again, and told the Empress that there was no need to trouble Mr. May to make another trip. He would go back to Shen, due to write the talisman himself. Before that, he had to go to the Yao Kingdom. Lu Hanyan and Li Qing stayed in the sect for the time being. Although the Empress had already reserved the Emperor's Qi for them, not everyone could be like the Empress, who could rely on the Emperor's Qi to reach level 7 when they were only level 5. Before her, The Shao royal clan had used large amounts of resources to forcefully push the emperor or the crown prince to the sixth realm for safety reasons. Only then would they begin to inherit the emperor's qi. The two Grand Supreme Elders' seventh realm cultivations were so majestic that even if only a tenth of their qi remained, they could still forcefully push the creation realm cultivator to the see-through realm. In the history of Fulu school, quite a few heads had been promoted this way. Although the two Grand Shang elders had the intention of passing on their power to Lu Hanyan and Li Qing, Li Mu still did his best to do what he should do as a disciple of the Fulu school. The North County was not far from the Demon Nation. After a few hours, Li Mu had already appeared in the Thousand Fox Nation. Phantom Princess had already told Fox 6 to prepare the herbs that Li Mu needed. She asked Li Mu, "Is this enough? If it's not enough, you can go to the treasury and pick." "Enough, enough." Li Mu waved his big sleeve, and the pile of spirit herbs disappeared on the spot. He looked at Illusion Princess and said, "Thank you." Huan Ji rolled her eyes and said, "Why are you being so polite with me?" Li Mu said, "These things are very important to me. It's all thanks to you. Continue with your work. I'll go back first." Before he could fly up, Illusion Princess grabbed his wrist. She frowned and looked at him. She said, "You want to leave after taking things? How can there be someone like you? Also, it's already dark. Can't you stay for a night before leaving?" Li Mu thought about it carefully and realized that it was not very good for him to do this. After taking such precious things, what was the difference between saying thank you and those scumbags who took a girl's body and ran away? He looked at the completely dark sky and said, "Then I'll sleep for a night." It was Li Mu's room in the harem. Phantom Princess had Fox 6 bring in a few dishes. Li Mu had not eaten all day, but just as he picked up his chopsticks, the Empress's spirit snail vibrated again. Li Mu made a shushing gesture to Phantom Princess and then picked up the spirit snail. The Empress asked from the other side, "Have you eaten?" Just this one sentence showed that their relationship was not the same as before. The Empress used to use the spirit snail to summon him, and she would always find some excuse, such as discussing national affairs or giving advice on cultivation. But now she was so direct. With the Empress's personality, what was the difference between, "Have you eaten?" and, "I miss you"? It seemed that his strategy for the Empress was starting to work. Li Mu smiled and said, "I'm eating." Phantom Princess suddenly felt that her throat was uncomfortable again. She covered her mouth and coughed a few times. Cough, cough. The Empress's voice changed immediately. "Didn't you say that something happened at Fulu school and you secretly went to see that fox spirit again?" Li Mu explained. "Your Majesty misunderstood. I only came to Thousand Fox Country to get some spirit medicine to make the talisman liquid for the talisman of Tianji. Tomorrow morning, I will leave for Chengdu." Zhou whispered, "I didn't give you enough. You still need to find that fox." Phantom Princess snorted and said, "Unfortunately, I don't have anything here, but I have a lot of spirit medicine. If you don't have any more spirit medicine, come find me." Zhou directly asked Li Mu, "When is that fox leaving? I want to talk to you alone." Phantom Princess said unhappily, "You're the one who interrupted our meal. You should be the one leaving." Li Mu was in a dilemma. He had taken both the Empress and Phantom Princess's gifts, so no matter which one he sided with, he would be letting the other down. He put down his chopsticks and said, "I have been running around for 2 days. I want to rest. Phantom Princess, you can go back first. Her Majesty should rest early too." Phantom Princess heard this and could only leave. After she left, Li Mu took out the spirit snail again and whispered, "Your Majesty, she left." Zhou said unhappily, "I told you to stop looking for that fox. You didn't listen to me." "She doesn't have good intentions towards you," Li Mu said. "Your Majesty, don't worry. I will be careful." Without Phantom Princess's interruption, Li Mu and Queen's conversation became more casual. They talked about how they would live in seclusion in the fields and grow vegetables. At this time, Li Mu did not notice that compared to the last time he slept here, there was an extra decorative clam shell at the head of his bed. At the head of Phantom Princess's bed, there was also a clam shell that looked exactly the same. At this moment, she was sitting at the bedside and listening to the sound coming from the clam shell. However, the more she listened, the deeper her frown became. Li Mu and Zhou Qiong had actually decided to grow flowers and vegetables together in the future. What was their relationship? Could it be that Zhou Qiong had already obtained the advantage of being in a favorable position and had gotten Li Mu first? The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. When there was no sound coming from the clamshell, she immediately went back to the harem. Li Mu had just finished chatting with the Empress and was about to eat when Phantom Princess pushed the door open again. The Empress probably wouldn't call again tonight. Li Mu looked at her and asked, "Do you want to eat together?" Phantom Princess sat down across from Li Mu and asked in a low voice, "Tell me honestly, what are your thoughts towards Zhou Yi?" Li Mu thought for a long time and didn't plan to lie to her. He said, "It's the thought of growing feelings over time." Phantom Princess said angrily, "How can you face your wife?" Li Mu said, "My wife has already agreed." What? Phantom Princess was shocked. Lu Hanyan agreed to the matter between you and Zhou Yi. Is she crazy? Li Mu didn't answer, and Phantom Princess didn't need him to answer. She looked at Li Mu and asked, "You have feelings for Zhou Yi over time. Then what are your feelings for me? You know that the Heavenly Fox clan will repay kindness, but you are still so good to me. You have given me a favor that I can't repay in my lifetime. What am I in your heart?" Phantom Princess's expression was serious. Li Mu couldn't beat around the bush like before. The premise of growing feelings over time was to spend time with her. He and Phantom Princess didn't have long experiences together. During the longest time they spent together, he was the little snake and she was Lord Phantom Princess. No matter if it was Li Mu or her, they didn't have any feelings for each other. Now, the relationship between the two of them was that of the little snake and Lord Phantom Princess, that of the state preceptor and the queen, that of the six-tailed celestial fox and her benefactor. Their different identities were intertwined, and even Li Mu himself did not know what their relationship was. Phantom Princess naturally had an important place in his heart. But how important was it? Li Mu couldn't explain it with words. Li Mu walked to her side, grabbed her hand and placed it on his chest. He said, "I don't know either. Why don't you feel it for yourself?" Since he couldn't describe it with words, he would let her feel it for herself. Phantom Princess placed her hand on Li Mu's chest. She could clearly feel his emotions. She didn't know how to describe it. The only thing she knew was that she was very important in Li Mu's heart. She grabbed Li Mu's hand and placed it on her chest. She said, "Feel it too." Other than the fullness, Li Mu also felt a love that could drown him. This was Phantom Princess's feelings for him. Phantom Princess looked at Li Mu and said, "You also like me, but it's not as deep as I like you. But it's okay. You'll know how good I am in the future." She sat down again and took out a bottle of wine from the storage space. She poured a cup for Li Mu and herself. She said, "I'm very happy tonight. Drink with me." Chapter 524. Who would reject the reasonable request of a woman who was full of love for him? Moreover, it was just a small matter like drinking with her. Li Mu raised the cup and when he brought it to his mouth, he hesitated for a moment. With Huan Ji's style, Li Mu was not sure if there was anything added to the wine. Huan Ji saw the slight change in his expression and said, "What, are you afraid that I'll poison it?" She drank all the wine in her cup and then tilted the cup down. Not a single drop of wine leaked out. Li Mu did not argue and drank all the wine in one gulp. It was strange that the wine did not taste like alcohol at all. Instead, it tasted sweet. Could it be a new type of sweet wine from the Yao Kingdom? At this time, Huan Ji looked at Li Mu and said, "At the beginning, I hated you very much. I have never been bullied like this in my life. I told my father to put a bounty on you and swore that I would repay you 100 times the humiliation I suffered from you." Li Mu explained. "That time, you provoked me first." "Then what about the White Emperor's cave?" Huan Ji took a deep breath and continued. "You, a man, brought people from the Six Dao sects to bully a woman like me. You stole so many things from me and even stole the Demon Emperor's heavenly book," Li Mu said. "At that time, we were still enemies. Of course, I would not be merciful to my enemies. Later on, didn't I give you the heavenly book?" Huan Ji ignored Li Mu and continued. "Later on, something happened to my father and brother. Me and Fox 6 were hunted down. It was you who saved us. You killed Bai Xian and took back the 1,000-fox kingdom. You resisted the attacks of the demon sect and the celestial wolf tribe. At that time, I knew that other than giving myself to you, I would never be able to repay your kindness in this life. Li Mu felt that his mouth was dry. It was not because of Huan Ji's sudden confession, but because he was really thirsty and his body was hot. He poured another cup of wine and chilled it with his magic power. Then he drank all the wine in one gulp, hoping to sober himself up. Phantom Princess was still rambling. She took off her shirt and looked at Li Mu. Don't you feel hot wearing so much? 1,000 Fox Country was in the middle of a mountain range, and the temperature was just right. With Li Mu and Huan Ji's cultivation, they were already immune to both heat and cold, so how could they feel the heat? He immediately realized where the problem was. He pointed at the jug and said to Huan Ji, "This wine." Huan Ji looked at him with her charming eyes and asked, "Wine? What wine? Where is the wine?" Li Mu was stunned. "Then what's in the pot?" Huan Ji's face turned red as she lowered her voice and said, "This is our Fox Clan's acacia water. We drink it on the night of the Heavenly Fox Clan's wedding. Every time you come, you leave quickly. I don't have time to develop feelings for you, so I can only use this method." Li Mu was shocked. He lowered his head and chanted, "If the heart is as clear as ice, the sky will collapse. If the heart is as clear as ice, the sky will collapse." After chanting the clear heart chant, his heart quickly calmed down. However, his body was still unbearably hot. This chant had a miraculous effect on the heart, but it had no effect on the body. This heat and desire came from the depths of his body. Huan Ji took off her second layer of clothes and slowly walked towards Li Mu. She asked, "Since you also like me, why are you still resisting?" Li Mu clenched his teeth and said, "Feelings need to be cultivated." Huan Ji gently placed her hand on his chest and said, "It's not too late to cultivate in the future." Li Mu used his magic power to resist the desire in his heart. Huan Ji looked at him for a while and said, "I forgot to remind you. The more you use your magic power to resist, the faster the medicine will melt in your body. Feel it now, isn't your body soft?" She used her magic power that was far stronger than Li Mu's to push him onto the bed. She bit his ear and said with a seductive voice, "Just do it." Inside the palace on the roof of a certain hall, Hu Lu murmured, "Lord Huan Ji should succeed. That's the joyous union pill. No one below the upper realm can resist it." Hu Jiu didn't say anything. She grabbed the wine jar with one hand and drank it in one gulp. Some people were happy while others were sad. Tonight was Lord Huan Ji's big day. Tonight, 1,000 Fox Country had another sad person. Early in the morning, Li Mu woke up from the soft bed. Huan Ji was already awake. She sat on the bed and combed her long hair. She looked back at Li Mu and said, "Don't worry, I will be responsible for you. As long as you are willing, you can become my empress now." Ouch! Before she finished speaking, she was pulled onto the bed. Li Mu's face darkened. He clenched his teeth and said, "Fox Demon, you asked for it." 1,000 Fox Country. Imperial Palace Hall. The demon officials who had been waiting for a long time didn't see Her Majesty the Queen, but only Commander Hu Lu. Hu Lu slowly walked into the hall and said to the dozens of demon officials, "The Queen won't have morning court today. Disperse." Shendu Changle Palace. It had been a few days since Li Mu returned to Shendu. He brought back the materials for the second Tianji talisman from 1,000 Fox Country. The two talismans that he and the Queen worked together to draw had also been taken back to Baiyun Mountain by Xianxia. Lu Hanyan and Li Qing hadn't returned yet. Before the two grand elders died, they would pass on their life's knowledge and comprehension to the inner disciples. Other than Li Mu, all the core disciples of Fu Lu School had been summoned back to the mountain. Li Mu sat below the Empress, in his exclusive seat. He had already been reading a memorial for almost an hour. It wasn't that he had encountered a difficult decision, but he still couldn't accept that Huan Ji had forced him to lose his virginity. The Queen had warned him many times to be careful of Huan Ji, but Li Mu didn't take it to heart. It was too late to say anything now. He hadn't made any substantial progress with the Queen, but he had already done it with Huan Ji. Li Mu hadn't told Lu Hanyan and Li Qing about this yet, because it was embarrassing. The biggest problem now wasn't Lu Hanyan and Li Qing. If the Queen knew about this, the consequences would be unimaginable. She and Huan Ji were like fire and water. She would definitely think that Li Mu had betrayed her. Li Mu secretly glanced at the queen and lowered his head to continue reading the memorial. Zhou Yi also glanced at Li Mu and asked, "How did your cultivation level increase again? Were you?" Li Mu immediately stood up and said, "I didn't betray your majesty. The Grand Elder of Fulu School imparted his power to me." Zhou Yi finished speaking and looked at Li Mu again. "What did you say you betrayed?" Li Mu slowly sat down and lowered his head. "Nothing." Zhou Yi frowned and said, "I've already noticed. After returning from Thousand Fox Country, you've been absent-minded. Is that fox so attractive to you?" Li Mu's expression didn't reveal anything. He said seriously, "Your Majesty, you've misunderstood. I was just thinking that reality is so cruel. Even a 7th Realm Grand Elder can't avoid reaching the end of his lifespan." Zhou Yi said, "What's there to think about? Everyone will die one day. 180 years is already a lot. A meaningful decade is better than a century." Li Mu said slowly, "Although that's the case, isn't cultivation for longevity? Most cultivators fight for their lives and only live a few years longer than normal people. What kind of cultivation is this?" Zhou Yi didn't agree with Li Mu's words. He said calmly, "Longevity isn't necessarily a good thing. If I had to choose, as long as I can spend my mortal life with the person I love, I'd rather not have a long lifespan." Li Mu said, "I think so too." The two looked at each other. Li Mu's expression was calm. Zhou Yi quickly looked away. Li Mu sighed. They were both rulers of a country. If the queen had half the initiative of Huan Ji, Ling would have a brother or sister by now. Chapter 525. After leaving Changle Palace, Li Mu went to the consecration department to take a look. Before he left, 2 high consecrators stopped Li Mu and asked, "Lord Li, there were 2 strange phenomena in the palace a few days ago." "What was that?" Li Mu answered honestly, "It was a strange phenomenon born from the talisman of heavenly secrets." The 2 rubbed their hands and asked nervously, "The 2 talismans of heavenly secrets?" Li Mu nodded and said, "That's right. They are for you. Do a good job here. When the time comes, the 2 talismans of heavenly secrets will be in your hands." Hearing this, the 2 heaved a sigh of relief and said solemnly, "Don't worry, Lord Li. Don't worry, Her Majesty. We will do our best and love our job." There were still a few years before the 2 high consecrators' talismans of heavenly secrets were handed over. The Great Zhou was vast and rich in resources. A few years was enough for the imperial court to gather a few more materials, so there was no need to worry. For these high-level cultivators, the biggest enemy was their lifespan. Fu Daozi and Xianghu were in a hurry to take in disciples because they wanted to pass down their mantle and resolve their regrets before their lifespan ran out. After cultivating to the 7th realm, one's lifespan was only 180 years. Li Mu also felt that it was too short. However, the Empress was right. It was much more meaningful to spend the rest of one's life with one's loved one than to cultivate bitterly for a few years and then come out of seclusion. Lu Hanyan and Li Qing were not here. There were only Wan, Xiaobai, and a few maids at home. Li Mu usually did not have much time to accompany them alone. Today, he took the initiative to take them out for a stroll. He owed Xiaobai the most. As his spy, Xiaobai was so sensible that Li Mu's heart ached. She often suffered grievances herself and delivered important information for him. In the end, Li Mu still had another fox by his side. Xiaobai still did not know. On the streets of Chengdu, Li Mu was being held by the girls. Xiaobai and Wan were chatting along the way. Suddenly, Li Mu noticed that Wan stopped in her tracks and stopped talking. Li Mu tilted his head and was about to ask her what was wrong when he noticed that Wan was looking in a certain direction on the street. Her face was a little pale. Li Mu followed her gaze and saw a beggar couple begging on the street. The people of Chengdu were kind and charitable. Occasionally, passers-by would take out 1 or 2 copper coins and put them in their bowls. Wan stared at the beggar couple with tears in her eyes. Li Mu seemed to have realized something. He silently took Wan's hand and held it tightly. The beggar couple begged for dozens of copper coins and walked into a secluded alley. The beggar couple was clearly very familiar with this alley. After more than 10 turns, they finally came to a dilapidated courtyard. The walls of the courtyard were mottled and half collapsed. The courtyard was also overgrown with weeds. Clearly, no one had lived here for a long time. Only some homeless beggars in Chengdu would use this place as a temporary residence. The two walked in through the collapsed wall. In the courtyard, a skinny young man in tattered clothes took the bowls from their hands. He poured the copper coins into his clothes and curled his lips. He said, "They say that the people of Chengdu are generous, but this is all there is to it. It took us so long to get this much." The woman said, "It's already quite a lot to get this in 2 hours. Don't gamble with it." The young man waved his hand and said, I know. I'll go out for a while. You can go to another place. Chengdu is so big, it's enough for us to curry favor for a few months." Watching the young man leave, the man said, "I told you not to give the money to him. He went to gamble and lost it again." The woman waved her hand and said, "If it's gone, then go ask for more. The people here are so generous. We're not afraid of not getting enough. We only have one son and we'll need him to send us off in the future." The man sighed and didn't say anything else. At this time, the woman said with some regret, "We shouldn't have lost that useless thing. If we had kept him until now, he would have been able to be sold for a high price, at least 100 taels." The man waved his hand and said, "Let's not talk about this. While it's still early, we can still get some more money today." The two walked out of the abandoned courtyard and walked back to the main street. At the entrance of the courtyard, 3 figures that they couldn't see stood there. Wanwan's face was pale and her eyes were empty. More than 10 years ago, she was abandoned once. More than 10 years later, she was reunited with her biological parents. More than 10 years later, the wound in her heart that had almost healed was torn open again. Li Mu and Lu Hanyan had always doted on Wanwan like a child and never let her come into contact with cruel things. Li Mu couldn't imagine how much pain her biological parents had caused her. He took a deep breath and pulled Wanwan into his arms. He said, "Don't forget, you still have me in Mississippi." Xiaobai also hugged her from behind and said, Me too. We'll always be by your side." On a street somewhere in Chengdu. "Everyone, please do a good deed. Give us a copper coin to eat. Do a good deed, do a good deed." A beggar couple was begging on the street. Beggars were rare on the streets of Chengdu. There were opportunities everywhere. As long as they worked hard, they wouldn't have to beg on the street. Although the people felt that they were reaping without sowing, there would still be people who would be sympathetic and reward them with some money. The couple stood on the street and were whispering. The people on this street weren't as generous as the people on the previous street. 3 figures stopped in front of them. Standing in the middle was a man, and on either side of him was a beautiful young lady. The 3 of them were dressed luxuriously, and their auras were extraordinary. Such people were either rich or noble, and the 2 of them subconsciously bowed. The girl with an oval face on the right took out a banknote from her sleeve and put it in their bowl. Her gaze lingered on the beggar couple's faces for a long time. Then she turned and left, never looking back. The 2 of them didn't dare to look at the girl from the beginning to the end. Their eyes were fixed on the banknote of 100 taels in the bowl. Their throats moved and they swallowed hard. Did I see wrongly? This is 100 taels. Although they heard that the people of Chengdu were generous, they didn't expect that someone would be so generous as to give 100 taels to beggars. After coming back to her senses, the woman grabbed the banknote and hid it in her sleeve. Then, the 2 of them knelt down in front of the 3 figures who were already far away. They said joyfully, "Thank you, young master. Thank you, young miss." After the 3 of them walked past them, they didn't turn back to look at them. Not long after Li Mu, Wanwan, and Xiaobai returned home, Mr. Mei came to invite them to the palace. The Empress wanted them to eat in the palace today. Wanwan had always been very enthusiastic about eating in the palace. However, today, she only took the plate of vegetables in front of her. She only ate a few mouthfuls of the rice that she usually ate with 3 bowls. Only Ao Qingxin ate happily. Seeing that Wanwan didn't eat much, he took the initiative to take her bowl and said, "You don't like rice? I'll help you eat." The Empress obviously also noticed Wanwan's abnormality. After eating, she asked Li Mu to stay in Chang'e Palace and asked, "What's wrong with Wanwan? Did you bully her?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "Wanwan met her parents in Chengdu today." Zhou Yi asked doubtfully, "Shouldn't she be happy about this?" Li Mu told her what happened today. Zhou Yi suddenly stood up and said angrily, How can there be such parents in this world? Li Mu looked at her. The Empress's parents weren't much better than Wan Wan's parents. The Empress, who felt sorry for Wan Wan, went to comfort her. Before she left, she told Li Mu to let Ao Qingxin go. She usually stayed in Shendu and didn't go out. There was no use in keeping this dragon in the palace. There was indeed no use in keeping him. The only use was that after he entered the palace, the Empress never left behind 3 meals a day. Li Mu looked at the little female dragon who was still sitting at the table and said, "You can go back to the South Sea." Ao Qingxin raised his head. His mouth was still stuffed with food, and he looked at Li Mu with a doubtful gaze. Li Mu said, "Her Majesty has pardoned your crime. You can go back." Ao Qingxin swallowed the bulging food in his mouth, and then said, "I can't go back. Our dragon race's promise is worth 1,000 gold. We said 3 years, and it's 3 years. Not a day less." Chapter 526. Li Mu didn't want to leave, so he didn't force her. He only warned her, "You can eat whatever you want from now on, but don't steal Wan Wan's food. Otherwise, I'll send you to the border to guard South Lake. You can eat the fish and prawns in the lake." Seeing her nod, Li Mu turned and left. Wan Wan stayed in the palace for the time being. Xiao Bai thought of ways to make her happy. Li Mu left the palace and came to the consecration department. 2 great consecrators came out to welcome him personally and asked, "Lord Li, do you have any orders?" Li Mu waved his sleeves, and an image appeared in the air. There were 3 figures in the image. Li Mu looked at them and said, "Send someone to Peace Square. Find these 3 beggars and send them out of the divine capital. I don't want to see them in the divine capital for the rest of my life." 15 minutes later. High up in the sky of the central region, a beggar couple and their son curled up in the corner of the flying boat. They were shocked and shivering. Great Consecrator Chen stood at the bow of the boat with a calm expression. Lord Li said he didn't want to see them in the divine capital for the rest of his life. Naturally, he would send them as far away as possible. He looked back at the 3 of them and said, "The 3 of you remember, don't step into the central region for the rest of your life. Otherwise..." He didn't finish his sentence. The 3 people at the end of the boat also repeatedly kowtowed and promised. Everything that happened today was too inconceivable for them. They were already scared out of their wits and didn't even dare to ask a single question. Great Consecrator Chen didn't know what happened. He looked at the 3 of them and calculated with his fingers. He could only calculate that the 3 of them had missed a great opportunity. This opportunity was most likely related to Lord Li. If they could form a good relationship with Lord Li, even if these 3 beggars didn't have great power for the rest of their lives, they could still be very rich. Unfortunately, they didn't know what they had done to cause Lord Li to hate them so much, so they missed this opportunity. Divine Capital. It had been a few days since that incident, but Wan Wan was still unhappy. In the past few days, she had been silent and didn't eat much. Li Mu was very worried when he saw her. He had been thinking for a long time, but he still couldn't think of a good way to help Wan Wan out of this state. At this time, a sound transmission magic treasure in the storage space vibrated. After Li Mu inserted his magic power, he asked, "Senior brother, what's the matter?" Xianxia's voice came from the sound transmission magic treasure. Half a month later, Xuanzong of the East Sea will be holding a Taoist exchange meeting. At that time, the 6 sects of Taoism will all participate. Junior brother, do you want to take a look and increase your knowledge? Li Mu was still worried about Wan Wan. He was about to refuse when he suddenly thought of something and said, "Okay then." Although he had already ordered people to chase that family out of Fairy's capital so that Wan Wan wouldn't be reminded of sad memories, the current Fairy's capital was a sad place for her. It was hard for her to be happy if she stayed here for a long time. He might as well take this opportunity to take them out for a walk. It would also be a good chance for Wan Wan to relax. After that, Li Mu learned about the details of this exchange meeting from Xianxia. The Taoist exchange meeting was organized by the number 1 sect of Taoism, Xuanzong. It was held once every 5 years. At the beginning, the purpose was for Taoism cultivators to exchange their cultivation experiences and explore the mysteries of cultivation. As the leaders of Taoism, The 6 sects of Taoism would also have the powerhouses of their sects give lectures during the exchange meeting. They would selflessly contribute knowledge of weapon forging, alchemy, talisman writing, and so on. Of course, no one would reveal their cultivation experiences. The core secrets of the 6 sects were also tightly guarded and never leaked. Although it was called an exchange meeting, it was actually not very helpful for cultivation. This was for high-level cultivators. 4 low-level cultivators who had just entered the path of cultivation, especially those who didn't belong to any sects and were exploring alone, this kind of exchange meeting was a golden opportunity that could only be encountered by chance. The basic knowledge that the big sects disdained was also precious to them. The real reason why the 6 sects participated in the exchange meeting was not because they could exchange their cultivation experiences, but because they could exchange resources and take what they needed. The Fulu school didn't lack Fulu, but it lacked alchemy pills and magic treasures. It was the same for the other sections. In the process of trading with each other, they could also improve their relationship. In the Changle Palace, Li Mu explained the situation to the Empress. Ao Chengxin had been listening for a long time. He stood up and volunteered, "Take me with you. You can ride on me. It's more convenient and comfortable than taking the flying boat." This little female dragon who had never seen the world obviously wanted to take the opportunity to see the colorful world. However, what she said was not wrong. Riding on her was much more comfortable than taking the flying boat. Moreover, it didn't consume their own magic power. It only took a meal to fly 1,000 miles. There was another advantage to taking her. Xuanzong was on the East Sea. With her, they could also see the underwater world with Wan Wan and Xiao Bai. As long as Li Mu didn't go to the Demon Nation, the Empress had no objections. Moreover, the main purpose of this trip was to take Wan Wan to relax and help her resolve the knot in her heart. She approved Li Mu's leave without any hesitation. Half a month later, in the East County of the Great Zhou. Since a month ago, many cultivators had begun to gather in the East County. Xuanzong held the exchange conference every 5 years. For these individual cultivators, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They either hoped to hear the teachings of the powerhouses from the 6 sects or wanted to exchange for some useful items for cultivation. Xuanzong was on the East Sea, nearly 1,000 miles away from the East County. Cultivators above the 4th realm could cross this distance with their magic power. For those below the 4th realm, even if they learned how to fly, their magic power couldn't sustain it. Most of them chose to travel by boat. Some merchant ships in the East County didn't waste such an opportunity. They carried these cultivators between the coast of the East County and Xuanzong. Not only could they make a lot of money, but they could also get a group of guards with powerful magic power for free to protect them from the invasion of the pirates. The exchange conference was about to begin. On the East Sea, there were more than 10 times more merchant ships than usual. The sun was shining brightly, and the sea and sky were the same color. Several figures stood on the deck, their faces full of longing and excitement. Xuanzong, the leader of the 6 Taoist sects, was the holy land in the hearts of countless Taoist cultivators. They only had the opportunity to get close to this place during the exchange conference every 5 years. In the crowd, a middle-aged man looked to the east and murmured, "I've been in the Jushen realm for 5 years. I hope I can encounter an opportunity this time and reach the transcendent realm." A young woman hugged a small bag tightly, hoping to use this precious spiritual medicine she found by chance to exchange for a protective immortal robe from the market. Another man held a broken flying sword in his hand. He breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I've finally gathered enough spiritual jades to exchange for a flying sword." On the surface of the sea, merchant ships sailed slowly. Occasionally, streams of light would streak across the sky and pass over their heads. Soon, they disappeared from sight. The people on the merchant ships looked at the figures in the streams of light with envy in their eyes. Those were the true powerhouses of the cultivation world. The realm of those seniors was the goal of most of them. "Look, what's that?" Suddenly, someone pointed to the sky. Everyone looked in the direction of his finger and saw a huge spirit ship sailing across the sky. There were many figures on the spirit ship. The speed of this spirit ship was much faster than their merchant ships. Soon, it disappeared into the horizon. Someone who was knowledgeable immediately recognized the origin of the spirit ship. He said, "It's the spirit ship of the northern sect." The northern sect's refining technique is the best in the Taoist sections. I hope to buy a high-grade Dharma treasure from the northern sect in this exchange conference. In every exchange conference, other than being able to listen to the Tao lectures of powerhouses for free, the thing that these itinerant cultivators looked forward to the most was being able to exchange for Fu Lu, pills, Dharma treasures, and other items from the 6 Taoist sects. The names Fu Lu School, Elixir Sect, and Northern Sect were a guarantee of quality. Everyone was on the merchant ships. Along the way, countless powerhouses flew over their heads. The light from their Dharma treasures was an eye-opener for them. Many of the youths who were participating in the exchange conference for the first time had a strange look in their eyes. At a certain moment, another ray of light appeared at the end of the horizon behind them. Under the gazes of the crowd, a huge white dragon roared from behind. Immediately, a series of exclamations erupted on the merchant ships. "Oh my God, what am I seeing? The dragon race! It's actually the dragon race. I've only seen the dragon race in books. Look, there are figures on the dragon race." When the huge dragon flew closer, they were shocked to discover that there were 3 figures standing on the huge dragon's head. From afar, they should be a man and 2 women. When everyone saw that, they were all stunned. Along the way, they had seen people riding swords, people riding boats, people flying in the sky, but they had never seen anyone riding a dragon. The dragon race was the most powerful and arrogant race in the world, yet it was used as a mount. Then, what kind of identity and strength did the person who rode a dragon as a mount have? Splash! The huge dragon flew over their heads. When it reached a certain part of the sea, it dived back into the water and never appeared again. While the cultivators on the surface of the sea were discussing, a different kind of scenery was under the sea. The dragon race was the master of the water race. Under Ao Isen's summons, all kinds of creatures in the sea quickly gathered here. The huge whales swam slowly, the dolphins shuttled through the water, and the ferocious sharks became very obedient and swam around them. Li Mu looked at Wan Wan and Xiaobai who were playing with the fishes. When he saw Wan Wan's face light up with a bright smile, he heaved a long sigh of relief. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.